Well, hello everybody watching this live. Hello everybody who's gonna watch this recorded. Welcome Riendis and welcome Honeymoon Prophet. Hiya. So, yeah, I got something to show you, okay? I stumbled upon this valuable document this morning that talks a little bit about different approaches to the revolution and different approaches to the subject. If you're reading like the subject of the stream right now, live, or the title of the video, this is about an interview I found with Fidel Castro and Salvador Allende. Fidel Castro from Cuba, revolutionary leader from Cuba, and Salvador Allende, the revolutionary leader from Chile, who, tried different approaches because they were facing different circumstances and had different outcomes because their historical circumstances were also different. So we're gonna analyze a little bit and go like, okay, this is happening. Okay, let's see. Dorian Sapiens, welcome. Good people here. Yeah, we got the best quality. Best people, and this is not a Trump bullshit. This is actual people who are made of all of the good stuff, okay? So as I said, I found this document, which I think is very valuable. So let's get to it, because, me ranting like that, what's the point, right? So let me show you. This was compiled by this Ficciones de lo Real. Yo, Ida is in the house too, and little red Eaton. Little red Eaton. Johannes Eaton, the Bauhaus professor, possibly. Good reference if that's the case. Yeah, I found this document, okay, and it's fantastic. Compiled by this Ficciones de lo Real channel that I'm gonna play for y'all right now, and we're gonna watch it together and see what this is all about. I think this is very valuable. I've watched it before, okay? This is Ficciones de lo Real, Fictions of the Real, program dedicated to documentary cinema. This is a channel called Periódico Liberance, probably because it's in Spanish. I'm gonna try and have it translated to you all, okay? So I can really share it, okay? Because I think this is very valuable stuff. So let's get to it, okay? Not that clever. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's clever. Okay. There's music and stuff. I hope I don't get like a copyright thing. But this is the stuff.
Cada vez que pensamos en el golpe de estado en Chile en 1973, el 11 de
Yeah, Pedro Brigger, nice journalist. So there you go.
septiembre de 1973.
So every time we think about the coup d'etat in 1973 in Chile, okay, this is from the public TV in Argentina, actually. So yeah, cool.
1973, se nos vienen a la memoria imágenes muy duras.
We get all the harsh images, right, come to mind, and that's not the case. We're gonna see as.
Por lo general, aquellas de los tanques o esas imágenes adustas del general Augusto Pinochet.
You see, the images that come to mind
Esta vez
are
decidimos compartir con ustedes
images from the tanks and the bombings and the all the killings, and General Augusto Pinochet, who was an evil motherfucker who we all hate, as we all should, because he was a bad example of what history must be. But this time around, we're going to share with you
imágenes diferentes.
Different images.
Mostrar a un Salvador Allende muy distendido en un diálogo.
So in this case, Salvador Allende is very, very relaxed, very casual, in a dialogue with one of the exemplary revolutionaries himself, Fidel Castro.
Con un amigo de él, Augusto Olivares, un periodista que se suicidó también en el Palacio.
Augusto Olivares, the one making the interview, was a friend of Allende as well.
De la moneda el día del golpe, y Fidel Castro en su visita a Chile. Allende asumió el 4 de septiembre de 1970 y poco más de un año después Fidel Castro llegó en una visita oficial a Chile.
So in 1970, Allende took office, and a little bit later than a year, about a year later, there was this official visit by Fidel Castro.
Se quedó casi 3 semanas y recorrió el país de punta a punta.
So he stayed for over 3 weeks, and he was going all over the country.
Un Fidel todavía con mucha energía, 45 años,
Fidel, he was 45, almost like me, and he still had a lot of energy, which good for him.
12 años después del triunfo de la revolución, el aura
12 years after the triumph of the revolution.
de la revolución cubana todavía era muy fuerte
And it
y además
was,
había varios movimientos guerrilleros en América Latina que justamente levantaban las banderas de la revolución cubana.
So the influence of the Cuban Revolution was very strong by that time, and there were like several insurgent movements going all over Latin America.
Sin embargo, en Chile, Salvador Allende había elegido un camino diferente, lo que se llamó la transición pacífica al socialismo.
So Salvador Allende in Chile, he chose a different path, which is the peaceful transition towards socialism.
Él había triunfado al Frente de la Unidad Popular con un programa realmente muy radical para tratar de provocar profundas transformaciones estructurales en Chile.
He had an electoral victory, and his program was extremely radical. He had a very, very good plan for Chile, and it was incredibly popular with the people in Chile, okay?
De hecho, el 11 de julio de 1971, antes de la llegada de Fidel Castro,
11th July 1971, just before Fidel Castro arrived,
él nacionaliza el cobre.
he's gonna nationalize the copper mines, which was big, one of the biggest sources of income for Chile, basically. So he expropriated copper and made it, public.
¿Qué vamos a ver hoy? Realmente un diálogo distendido entre dos estadistas, un Fidel muy respetuoso respecto de la figura de Salvador Allende.
So today we're going to see a very, very casual dialogue between two men of state, okay? And Fidel was extremely respectful, and though he had some
Aunque en
criticism.
ese momento había un debate,
There was a
estaba
debate.
muy claro que lo que impulsaba a Cuba era los movimientos armados para la toma del poder.
Because the angle of Cuba is to propose, armed movement to overtake, power, to take over power for the people, okay? So that's the approach. But what Allende was doing was absolutely social and absolutely peaceful, He was taking government, taking office, and you're going to see.
Como había sucedido en Cuba. Buscaban la revolución por la vía armada.
So revolution by the gun, the armed type of revolution, which worked like a charm in Cuba. That's why Fidel was proposing that model worked. He had the experience that it worked, so why not, right?
En Chile se buscaba un camino diferente. Vamos a ver un diálogo, les reitero, muy distendido entre dos estadistas que no se privan de comentar nada de lo que estaba pasando en ese momento en Chile y en Cuba.
So two statesmen, very casual, okay, who were commenting on what was happening in Chile and Cuba. So, but these people were absolute, figures, political figures. Their understanding of the situation, it was exemplary. And that's one of the things, that I want to stress in this video is it's these two Latin American leaders were absolute political reference for all of us, okay? So it's not, it looks like the dialogue lately, it seems to be like very US-centric, if you know what I mean. Everything turns around and spins around Europe and the United States, because we seem to be like the most important people of the world. But, the matter of fact is, much of the leftist revolutionary praxis was happening outside of Europe, outside of the United States, it was being led by, yeah, but by very diverse people. We could cite China, Vietnam. We could cite, you know, there are many revolutionaries that are not the clear cut that they want to sell us right now in the Euro and US centric. Chuquicamata, hell yeah. So this movie was adapted to completely the technical parameters of Canon Encuentro with the permission of their director. Dialogue was preserved in its totality, no modification. The illustrative archives were replaced for others of the same theme, keeping the standards of the movie, the filmmaker. That's what it says here. Because it's Canal Encuentro from the public TV back when it was super cool in Argentina and before the Macri disaster and whatnot. There you go. This movie was premiered worldwide in Paris in April 1972 as a testimony of the struggle for the Chilean process, being presented by the poet Pablo Neruda and Marcel Marceau, like the historical ideary of the government for the popular unit, for the people's unit. It has received the following awards. It's been awarded award Best Movie of the Year by the Specialized Critic in Chile, the Golden Palm, award to the Best Historical Document, Special Great Award in the International Yoshiart Festival in the USSR. That's us, the working class. This is Latin America. Make no mistake. I don't know, should I cut to the interview? You want to watch the whole thing? Let me know in the chat. I think this is relevant. I hope you're seeing it properly. Yeah. It's within the frame. It's cool. So, the Dialogue of America. And that's right, people. America is a big-ass continent. It doesn't stop within the limits of the USA. Make no mistake, okay? So this is Chile during the visit of Fidel Castro. Of course, it's a reconstruction. This was broadcasted in the public TV in Argentina. Yeah, of course. So glad you like it. So glad you like this kind of... we thank the collaboration of the Office Informations and Radio Diffusion, radio broadcasting of the Presidency of the Chilean Republic and the MP Eric Schnacke. For the realization, for the help on the making this film. Dialogue by Augusto Olivares, who was a personal friend of Salvador Allende, who was, who killed himself during the coup of... Okay, just in case, I'm gonna cover some really basics. I'm gonna keep it running, just the lower volume. Some very basics. This was before, this was after Salvador Allende was in power, and before the coup, the terrible coup that we know that happened, because of by the hand of the CIA, right? And who trained the military and the infamous Chicago boys to make the economical reforms that led to the impoverishment of Chile, and the further punishment of a country that was already being very punished. And Salvador Allende was taking the country into a better place. But that happened after this interview. During this interview, the process was happening, okay? And Salvador Allende was transforming the country into something much better, okay? He was trying to help the poor, much like all of the other democratic people, like Lula da Silva in Brazil, or like I would say, the Kirchners, but not so much in Argentina. You're right. The U.S. doesn't speak in the name of all of the Americas, and that's one thing that we need to remember. So ridiculous that Pinochet happened, and the people still try to say fascism is left wing. Yeah, of course. From a long time, it's been a long time since the men of the world wanted to have a chance of seeing face to face, close together, Prime Minister of Cuba, Commander Fidel Castro, and the Chilean President Salvador Allende. It is interesting that it is Latin America, the one who produced this phenomenon, and it catches the eye of the whole world.
Comandante Fidel Castro llegó a Chile, muchos periodistas,
since Commander Castro arrived to Chile, many journalists
han estado pensando cómo poder seguir una conversación entre estas dos figuras de la política mundial.
How can they follow a conversation between these two giants of world politics? And that's super. I think that's key. That's super important. That these two people were extremely important in the development of socialism, and everybody's looking to the German, same old German and European, European people. Check these two absolute giants of socialism, okay?
Este es el momento y esta es la oportunidad.
This is the moment, this is the chance
de poder tenerlos
to be able to have them
y
together,
frente a frente en un
face to
diálogo
face,
abierto
in an open dialogue
sobre temas
about
que interesan
subjects
a toda la humanidad.
that interest the whole humanity.
Presidente Allende,
President Allende,
se habla no solo en Chile, sino en todo el mundo
it's spoken not only in Chile but worldwide.
de la expresión vía chilena.
People talk about the via chilena, the Chilean way expression.
¿Cómo podría usted definir
How could you define it?
este proceso político
This
que se ha dado a
political
llamar la vía
process
chilena?
called la via chilena, the Chilean
En
way.
realidad,
Matter of fact,
la denominación
the denomination
de vía chilena podríamos decir
Chilean
casi
way.
que es una exageración,
it's almost an exaggeration.
pero yo creo que más que nada tiende a tipificar
But I think most of all
algo
tends to
que está de acuerdo con nuestra
define
realidad, nuestra
something that
historia y
agrees
nuestra
with our
tradición.
reality, our history,
Pueblos que luchan por su emancipación, nuestra historia y nuestra tradición.
and our tradition.
Pueblos que luchan por su emancipación
People
Tienen
who fight for their emancipation,
lógicamente que adecuar a su propia
they
realidad
must politically
las tácticas
adequate their own
y las
reality, the
estrategias
tactics,
que ha de
and the
conducirnos a las
strategies
transformaciones.
that need to drive us to transformation.
Chile, por sus características, por su
Chile,
historia,
because of its
es un país
characteristics and its
en
history,
donde la
is a country
institucionalidad burguesa
in which
ha funcionado a
bourgeois institutionality has been working
plenitud y en donde
all the
dentro
way,
de esta
and which
legalidad
within
burguesa
this
el
bourgeois
pueblo
legality, the people
sacrificadamente ha ido avanzando
has been advancing with a lot of sacrifices
y consiguiendo conquistas,
and conquering
ha ido
things one by
concientizándose,
one, has
ha
been
ido
getting more conscious,
comprendiendo
has been understanding
es
little by little
dentro de los regímenes capitalistas
that
y
is
del
not
reformismo,
within the capitalist regimes,
en donde Chile podrá alcanzar la dimensión de país.
where Chile may reach its dimension as a country, may fulfill its dimension of a country. So, yeah. They look to Germany because they want to keep capitalism. I don't know. It could be, internalized behaviors. You never know. I mean, it's also within the left, that this happens. It's yeah. But sure, capitalists, they are super happy to have us keep looking at Europe all the time, because that's how we're always gonna not in that way they keep us from learning. So let's continue with President Allende.
Dueños de su independencia económica y capaz.
While they are the owners of their own economic independence and able and capable
de llegar a niveles superiores de vida y de existencia.
Of arriving to superior levels of life and existence.
Hay que considerar entonces que Chile
we need to take into account then that Chile
tiene condiciones diferentes a otros países.
Has conditions that are different than other countries.
Por ejemplo, destacar que el Congreso chileno es diferente a otros países. Quiero, por ejemplo, destacar
I'd like to highlight, for example,
el Congreso chileno ha tenido 160 años de ininterrumpido funcionamiento.
That the Chilean Congress has been working uninterrupted for over 160 years.
Quiero hacer ver
I want to show
que las Fuerzas Armadas chilenas son Fuerzas Armadas profesionales.
That the Chilean armed forces are professional armed forces, and this is, this hurts to hear, considering what happened, after the fact, that it was within their own armed forces where the CIA was, training and indoctrinating their armed forces to betray their own country. Okay, so that's really fucked up, because he had a lot of faith on their army, right? And if you see it in hindsight, it's like, yeah, but he makes sense, because the way he shows the picture, he shows Chile as a very stable political regime that could not be shaken without the people, really, without there being a backlash. And, there was no way back then to anticipate what happened afterwards, okay? So, but we gotta understand, Allende's point as well. Like the circumstances, the specific circumstances of Chile, considering that very stable parliamentary regime, their old institutions that have been working nonstop, it's yeah. Oh, hello, Saint Just, Germany. So yeah, it's understandable that he thinks like that. Okay, we cannot be Captain Hindsight here and go like, yeah. No, it really hurts. It really hurts to see what happened after that, and it is really painful. But you can tell that he has a clear and valid analysis of the circumstances in Chile. I mean, who would have thought, And I don't think this would have the coup, the fascist coup from Pinochet wouldn't have happened without all the campaigning and all the finance and all the aid from the United States, from the CIA, basically.
Que a lo largo de nuestra historia han estado al margen de una acción política propiamente tal.
They've been separated from political action. The army, he's talking about the Chilean army, okay? That have been separated from any specific political position or action in this case.
Por último, y es lo más importante,
and last but not least,
la clase obrera chilena.
Most importantly, the Chilean working class
ha tenido una participación activa,
had an active participation,
una participación directa
a direct
en la formación
participation
de una conciencia y en las luchas
informing a consciousness and the struggles
populares.
the
Hemos
popular
dicho que
struggles.
la revolución chilena la haremos en pluralismo.
We said that the Chilean revolution, we see the plurality, democracy and freedom. Everyone,
aspectos habría que profundizarlo, tú comprendes.
Every single aspect would have to really go in depth. So I hope you understand. He's talking to Fidel Castro right now.
Que es imposible. Sin embargo, el factor fundamental es y será siempre la clase obrera y su unidad.
Without addressing the fundamental factor, which is the Chilean working class and its unity.
Comandante Castro,
Castro,
a lo que plantea el presidente Allende, ¿hay interés permanente?
Considering what Presidente Allende is saying, do you see a permanent interest
de profundizar en cómo se produce la incorporación de la clase obrera y cómo entra la clase obrera como protagonista en el proceso de la Revolución Cubana?
Of going in depth on the process of the working class and how the working class has a basic or the most important role in the Cuban Revolution.
Nosotros hemos definido este problema.
We have defined this problem in this way.
La lucha armada guerrillera que inició un reducido grupo de hombres.
The guerrilla armed struggle that was initiated by a small group of men
fue algo así, como un motor pequeño.
Was some sort of a small engine
que permitió arrancar el gran motor de la historia.
That allowed for the big engine of history to start.
Que son las masas.
Which are the masses.
El movimiento obrero en Cuba durante los últimos gobiernos.
The workers' movement in Cuba during the last governments before the revolution, that is, okay, we're talking about the 1970s or so, before the 1960s, before the Cuban Revolution.
Tanto el gobierno corrompido de Perío.
As much as the corrupt government.
En los últimos gobiernos, tanto el gobierno corrompido de Perío como el gobierno tiránico de Batista.
As much as the corrupt government of Prio and the tyrannical government of Batista.
Estaba controlada por dirigentes oficiales.
It was controlled by official dirigents or by, official bureaucrats, we could say. I could call them bureaucrats in a way. Let me adjust the mic a little bit. There you go.
Que virtualmente habían tomado por asalto a los sindicatos.
Were virtually taken by assault the unions. So in a way, the unions had like bureaucratized in many ways and officialized, so that's how the unions were immobilized by their own bureaucracy and their own will to survive under these corrupt and dictator-like regimes, like the Batista, for instance, was brutal.
Asesinando dirigentes comunistas.
Murdering communist dirigents or the communist militants.
Y dirigentes obreros honestos.
And honest working class figures. A puppet. Could be. I mean, yeah, they were, the unions were so officialized that they did the bidding of the governments, the corrupt governments before the revolution. It was that bad. It was that bad, and which was, which is kind of a historical analysis that when things get so bad, so scandalously bad, and we have things that are so scandalously bad right now, okay, and they give you good grounds for the revolution if you can show the people, and that's what I think is different today. It's our ability to show the people how bad shit is, because we're let's say, today in the world today, yeah, it is very sad. I agree with you, Franglish. When you in a world today where you're bombarded constantly with atrocities of all sorts or all kinds of stories, more and more gruesome. It's kind of like the trees don't let you see the forest, right? And you need to really go to greater lengths and adopt a different strategy to try and make the people conscious right now. Because back then things, were way more simple, because the level of manipulation, people were more sensitive towards social issues, and people were suffering social issues. Right now we got people, almost starving and believing that capitalist realism bullshit. So we really need to undo that. These are different circumstances, but I like the two different approaches, okay, that Allende and Fidel Castro are having, while being absolute comrades and having absolute support for each other. But they had like different ways to see their own revolutions. One more peaceful and one more relying on armed struggle, but none of them devoid of the other factors. It's just one is more preeminent than the other, and that because they were from very different countries, very different localities, and with very different histories, and they were in very different positions. That's important. Okay, let's keep going. Sorry, I'm rather ranting. I'm gonna translate more, comment less.
En esa situación, cuando triunfa la revolución,
in that situation, when the revolution triumphs,
había una situación muy especial.
There was a very special situation.
No había dirección oficial obrera.
There was no official working class direction. So there was no working class structure, we could say, right? There was no head of the working class. There was no big organized party, the Maoist approach to revolution, in which you have like a very well structured and very well formed party. Those conditions couldn't be met because of the former governments and their own locality and situation. So they had to build it otherwise. He's going to explain how.
Pero había un apoyo total y absoluto de la clase obrera.
So instead of that, what they had was an absolute support of the working class, which is something in the guerrilla war that they were doing at the beginning. This small group of people who were doing the guerrilla and were doing little sabotage actions towards the official Cuban army, and when they were taking over villages or just passing through villages, they were talking to the people and helping the people and protecting the people and talking to the people about their problems. So like, what happened? What happened? Oh, I'm so glad that you appreciate the context. Yeah, I'm going to try and introduce as much context to this so you all can appreciate the incredible height of these two political beasts in this interview, okay? So, one of the things that the Cuban guerrilla was doing was every time they went through a village, they were talking to the people in the village, and they were, really listening to the people in the village, okay? And that connection with the actual people, it's important. If the omnipresence of the atrocities in the nowadays world makes it be easier to show how bad it is. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, context. I'm trying to be helpful. Okay, I hope I'm not failing too hard. Okay, let's do it. Where were we? I'm gonna back down a little bit.
Dirección oficial obrera.
Yeah, there was no working class direction, the official structure, but there was a big support.
Pero había un apoyo total y absoluto de la clase obrera al movimiento revolucionario.
So the revolutionary movement had an absolute support from the Cuban working class, and it was because of this thing I told you before. Going village by village, talking to people about their problems, connecting with the people. Being part of the people. There's no separation between the army and the people and the army. And I think Fidel is gonna tell us about it later, so I'm not gonna spoil it or anything.
Que un movimiento que se gestó con obreros y campesinos.
There you go. It was a movement that was put together with workers and peasants, and farmers. Workers and farmers. There was no separation between the revolutionaries and the workers and the farmers. It was the same. It was the workers and the farmers were organized to become revolutionaries, but they were both because and that's one thing that really annoys me of the online, bullshit we live in, that people tend to think in either or. You're either one thing or the other when you can be both, okay? Let's be a little bit more flexible. Reality is not dual. It's almost never dual. Almost never dual, even less so in social situations. There's no yes and no answer, 1 and 0. That's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit, okay?
Nuestros soldados guerrilleros eran hombres de la zona, campesinos y trabajadores y obreros.
Our soldiers, our guerrilleros were people from the area, workers and farmers.
Y algunos intelectuales.
We had some intellectuals.
O que pudiera llamárseles intelectuales por su procedencia.
Or we could call them intellectuals because we're their background.
O por su condición de haber estudiado en la universidad.
Basically because they studied in the university.
Éramos nosotros.
And that was us.
Uno de nosotros, no todos.
Some of us, not all.
En esas condiciones nuestro movimiento, que era un movimiento genuinamente revolucionario, se ganó el apoyo total de la clase obrera.
In those conditions, our movement, our revolutionary movement, earned the full support of the working class.
Y así, al final de la guerra, en un momento crítico, mediante una estación de radio y sin contar con ninguna dirección organizada.
And that's how, at the end of the world, with no support whatsoever, only with a radio station and no organized, situation.
Se paralizó en cuestión de minutos a todo el país.
They could paralyze the whole country in a matter of minutes.
Mediante un llamado del ejército rebelde.
Just, by calling, having a call from the rebel army.
A través de su emisora radial.
Through their radio
y eso
stations.
fue en un momento en que ellos trataron de hacer una maniobra.
That was in a moment where the others, the reactionary forces were trying to make a maneuver.
Un golpe de estado.
A coup d'etat.
A última hora. Un
last minute coup d'etat.
Factor decisivo en el aplastamiento de Batista y en impedir que se pudiera hacer ningún tipo de maniobra.
And that was a decisive factor in overthrowing Batista because they couldn't stop them.
Factor decisivo en la toma del poder en ese minuto.
In that minute, that was a key factor in the overthrowing of Batista. Just a sip of water, okay? This is live. It's shitty TV, but I stay hydrated. I guess that's worth something, right? Okay.
Y claro, después del triunfo de las armas, la clase obrera pues se organizó, se preparó y constituyó el baluarte, constituyó la masa de combatientes.
So after the uprising by weapons, after the uprising was ongoing, it was when the working class organized themselves. Yeah, I gotta stay hydrated. You know the drill. So that's how the working class organized itself and constituted that big army. Once the thing was in motion, they had to keep working, fighting the fight and building the numbers at the same time, and it worked. I mean, look at us. We're here now. Cuba is still a fantastic place.
Entre nosotros, por un lado, continuamos desarrollando nuestro pequeño ejército, que llegaron a convertirse en poderosas fuerzas armadas.
So it was, parallel. They were building their little army that was becoming slowly into, powerful army.
Al mismo tiempo,
At the same
en caso de lucha, en caso de agresión al país, lleva detrás todo el pueblo organizado.
In a case of an outside invasion or aggression to the country, the whole people was already organized.
Cuadrado en sus unidades militares.
And everybody was organized in military units.
De manera que nosotros podemos decir que en nuestro país todos los obreros son soldados.
So in a way that we can say that in Cuba, all of the workers are soldiers.
Y también a la vez, como no hemos visto en la necesidad de tener muchos hombres sobre las armas, y esos hombres en determinado momento tienen que participar en la producción, decimos también que todos los soldados son obreros.
So at the same time as they needed to have many shoulders on the weapons, but also needed people to participate in production, all of the soldiers were also workers. So it went both ways, okay? That's a genius strategy. That's fantastic, And that's something that we need to introduce more in our politics today. There's no either or, 1 or 0. We need to be able to we in our togetherness we can multitask. We can be able to lead and carry several processes at the same time, several revolutionary processes at the same time, and not all of them rely on weaponry, but most of it, and I can witness to that. Most of the of doing activism is work, and it's boring and it's not heroic at all, but it's necessary. You can expect a lot of cleanup. You can expect a lot of hours carrying shit around and distributing things to people. Having practicing the aid that needs to be practiced, and that's the way. Okay.
Presidente, la clase obrera, de acuerdo con las dos respuestas de ustedes, pasa a ser el elemento protagonista dentro del proceso.
So he's asking that, according to both of their interventions, the working class was the main element in the whole process, in both approaches.
Hay un elemento, el escenario. ¿Usted podría hablarnos un poco de la tradición chilena, de la tradición de lucha?
So there's an element which is the stage, say the circumstances in which the revolution develops. And he's asking the journalist if President Salvador Allende could talk about the Chilean traditions.
Y del estilo del país.
And the style of the country, of course.
A propósito, ahí se oyen algunos gritos.
You can hear some children in the background. Is because they have a school.
Son de mis vecinas. Al lado hay un colegio, el Sagrado Corazón, y quieren verte.
The Sagrado Corazón school. They wanted to see Fidel Castro.
Bien.
The school kids.
Para contestar la pregunta de
answering the question,
Olivares, quiero decirte, Fidel, que lógicamente
I want to tell you, Fidel, that logically
Chile tuvo, por las características mismas de su régimen,
because of its own characteristics and its own regime, the way that things are organized there.
La posibilidad de que la clase obrera se organizara.
They had the chance for the working class to get organized beforehand, before the change happened. You see, it's different. In Cuba, they had to make do while they were fighting, and in Chile, the working class had time and space to get organized before they committed the change, and they put him in office with huge public support, and so they worked on this peaceful process to put Allende in power and effect all of the changes that the working class needed, but they did it by organizing in a more civil manner and in a way much less harmful to the society.
Nació el movimiento obrero chileno.
The agrarian Chilean movement was born
en zonas controladas por el imperialismo. Y que siempre
in areas that were controlled by imperialism.
Tuvo una conciencia.
And they were always consensus. And it's important to remember, the mining operations and the big agricultural businesses were always, a big thing in Chile. And they were controlled by foreign interests and multinational corporations most of the time, because the local governments were corrupt, and they took, whatever they needed to just, get the cash, right, and get the power, which is what most right-wing corrupt people want: cash and power, money, power, money. Same old bullshit. And they covered it with bullshit tales of fantasy and tradition and family and bullshit. But all they want is money and power and money. That's all there is. So Salvador Allende is telling that they were like big how it was in the 1910s, 20s, 30s, all over the world, wherever capitalism was happening. There were incredible violence towards workers and to prevent them from organizing, from union busting, and to absolute massacres like Santa Maria de Iquique. If you want to do some research, there was a massacre of, I'm going to type it in the chat, Santa Maria de Iquique. And you can Google that, you can search, internet search, fuck Google, fuck Amazon and fuck all the billionaires in the world. That's a freebie there. Let's continue. But they had time and a tradition of organized working class people who were fighting for the rights in a civil and organized fashion.
Anti-imperialista.
Anti-imperialist. In the salt mines, for instance.
Luis Emilio Recabarren fue el organizador, el orientador, el dirigente de la clase obrera. Y las luchas del proletariado chileno.
They had like big leaders of the working class, of the Chilean working class, and the struggles of the proletariat.
El campo sindical llevaron muchas veces.
In the union field, in the field of unions.
Veces, como en la mayoría de los países también, a la represión violenta.
They resulted in violent repression. It was. Chile could have made a peaceful transition until the CIA meddled them in their business. They trained the fucking military and the Chicago boys. Same happened in Argentina. Same happened, or very similar things happen in. You gotta check out. There's this great book called the Shock Doctrine. The Shock Doctrine is fantastic. How the Chicago School of Economics, pushed by the CIA, were trying to push neoliberalism all the way. Okay, let's move on.
Sin embargo,
however,
se superó y logró.
It was overcome.
A partir de 1939.
And from 1939 on, they achieved
unificarse en la Central Única de Trabajadores.
They managed to unify in a big coalition.
Pero antes,
but before that,
los campesinos y los obreros habían formado sus partidos de clase.
Both the peasants, the farmers and the workers had formed their own working class parties. So, they were organized. These people were heavily organized. There was this tradition in Chile of being heavily organized. It's, different than Cuba. Cuba, it was a different, but both approaches are really good. This, in spite of what happened later on in history, both approaches are valid. However, you need to ask yourself, and we need to ask ourselves, is there a strong organized or tradition of strong organized workers' parties in your area? That's something we need to ask ourselves, because these are two approaches, but there are as many approaches as historical circumstances.
Y tenemos nosotros que el Partido Comunista es el más antiguo de América Latina, uno de los más antiguos del mundo.
So the Chilean Communist Party is one of the oldest in Latin America and one of the oldest in the world.
Y por cierto, en relación a la población, uno de los más poderosos.
And one of the most powerful per capita in relation to population.
De igual manera el Partido Socialista.
Same with the Socialist Party.
Un partido de clase, un partido marxista.
Marxist and class-based party. Not like the Socialist Party in Spain, which is a neoliberal piece of shit, by the way. But, okay, that was a strange. I digress. Sorry about that.
Que teniendo puntos discrepantes en aspectos internacionales algunas veces, ha mantenido con el Partido Comunista no solo un diálogo, sino un entendimiento para encarar juntos los problemas esenciales de Chile.
So while the Communist Party and the Socialist Party had some deep disagreements, mostly in foreign policy and the sorts, they managed, to agree. They managed to come to an agreement and come to a powerful coalition that would be able to lead Chile, and that's what they did. They weren't bickering and infighting and bullshit. They were creating coalitions that became powerful political forces. That's something that's food for thought, isn't it?
Y allí que desde 1951 el Partido Socialista y el Partido Comunista empezaron a caminar por el sendero de un proceso de clase y con la decisión de hacer posible un vasto y amplio movimiento que permitiera los cambios estructurales de la vida chilena.
So that's how, both the Communist Party and the Socialist Party started working together, and creating this process of change, that took decades to come into fruition, but it was finally coming to fruition, and that was hard political work that spanned through decades. Again, today it's different. Today we have faster means of communication, more efficient ways to organize. We have stronger opposition that have also these tools that are using them very efficiently, and they do have the budget. But, we need to focus on maybe having the numbers. So they have the budget, but we have the numbers. They can probably show that budget through cavity of choice, if you know what I'm saying. So, yeah. Yeah, the anthracite miners were heavily organized back then. Yeah. We need to really bring unions back. And this anti-union sentiment that happened with neoliberalism and the bullshit of the end of history, which Francis Fukuyama is still, crying in a corner somewhere, because his loud ass mouth, broke so many lives, his bullshit. This hypnotic massage of bullshit, that was, affecting negatively so many lives. So that's what, again, food for thought, okay? I'm not gonna tell you what to do, whatever, but these are things that I think are very important. And these two people are really, really dropping some ideological bombs. They're fantastic.
Y por eso hoy día podemos decir que al margen de un criterio pequeño se ha logrado, sobre la base de la unidad de la clase obrera en el campo sindical y sobre el pilar de los partidos socialistas y comunistas, que sectores de la pequeña y mediana burguesía, como el Partido Radical, como el Movimiento Popular Unitario del Mapu.
So this heavy work they made possible to have some parties that are more like from the bourgeoisie, and he's listing several parties like the Radical and the Mapu Unity movement, and other political parties that were not per se revolutionary, were leaning in to their policies. They were leaning in to their ideas. So even when they're not into the end of capitalism or whatever, they were leaning into the fact that they were fixing the economical problems of the country by saving the working class, basically, and people's rights, human rights and stuff. Who would have known that human rights were actually a solution for most of the problems of our world, right?
Como los de la izquierda cristiana hayan configurado este proceso que lógicamente constituye un factor determinante del proceso de cambio dentro de la realidad chilena. Esto es más o menos, Fidel, el esquema de lo que ha ocurrido en Chile y la presencia combatiente y organizada de los trabajadores en el campo político y en el campo sindical.
So what President Allende is saying is that by having these parties leaning in, that was a huge factor of a change in a society. This is not just a political change, but a change in the structure of the Chilean society. And that was the process that was ongoing before it was broken, by the CIA and their goons, and their local corrupt army officers who were ready to indoctrinate into basically genocide of their political genocide, political prosecution and killing. Kidnapping, killing, disappearance of so many people in Chile. Okay, that was the savagery that followed after that. But if that wouldn't have happened, Chile would probably be the richest country in Latin America, as would be Argentina, of course. The whole southern cone would be the leading edge of Latin America if both of the coups that happened there, it's crazy. Yeah, let's bring back solidarity in unions. Definitely. I'm 700% with you on that. Okay, I think that's a cut for advertising. That's a cut for... It's cut for commercials. Okay.
Uno está muy acostumbrado a ver imágenes de Fidel Castro cuando se dirige a multitudes,
So people are used to seeing Fidel Castro addressing multitudes
con mucho entusiasmo, con mucho
very enthusiastically,
fervor. Lo mismo
with a lot of fervor.
pasaba también con Salvador Allende.
Same with Salvador Allende.
Uno también está acostumbrado a ver esas imágenes de fervor.
You're used to see those, very grandiloquent images of heroes addressing the people, yada yada.
Acá vemos algo diferente. Están los dos distendidos,
This is a different stage. They're all, casual, like the streaming, casual comrades. We're comrades, we're casual. I hope you're all doing good, that life is good with you all, that you're all in good shape, taking it easy, taking those solutions from these wonderful historical. And by the way, Pedro Borrega, another amazing journalist, if you want to check him out.
un periodista en el medio, muy amigo de Salvador Allende.
With a journalist in the middle who was a very good friend of Salvador Allende. We're basically beating on the same concepts.
Cómplice se puede decir,
A
pero
cómplice,
punzante
even.
también en las preguntas.
But also, he was asking the right questions. He was not, making a massage type of interview. He was really inquiring, okay?
Es interesante que hablan de temas que tienen mucha actualidad. Hablan del rol de los medios de comunicación, el rol de los medios en
Yeah, Pedro Borrega is really beating onto something important here. He's saying these historical interviews addressing some subjects that are still very relevant. And they're saying they're talking about the media.
Chile fue fundamental para la caída de Salvador.
And the role of the media in Chile was fundamental for the downfall of Salvador Allende. Private media were doing the hate propaganda and the lies. It's the shit we're seeing right now. All over the place, and that's the stuff that we're trying to combat here and now, all of us together. Okay, so yeah, let's keep an eye on this.
Allende. Hablan del futuro incierto de los jóvenes. Por supuesto que la
They talk about the uncertain future of the youth, which is, I think, very relevant considering climate change. And, sorry about you, young people. I'm hopefully gonna be dead. I wish I would be but yeah. But you're gonna see some very tough times, and I'm hoping we still have time to alleviate that and turn it around. Okay, I'm gonna do whatever I can to try and turn it around so you all can live a better life. Okay.
realidad cambió mucho si uno piensa lo que han pasado en estos últimos 40 años. Y ya hablan de la posibilidad de la interrupción por la vía violenta del proceso de transición pacífica al socialismo.
So they talk about the possibility of the interruption by violence of the peaceful transition to socialism. So they were suspicious of this, okay? Sad echoes through history. Much was true then that it is now. Yes. That's why history is super important. You know, we need to learn about it. Of course, it's not gonna, repeat itself as a farce or as a tragedy, like. But history makes waves. It doesn't repeat like a photocopy, but it does make certain waves. Okay. And it's things that we need to learn about. So we know what to do with the stuff today if we know what happened yesterday and what failed back then. Hello, Lorcan. Welcome to this stream. Yeah, it often rhymes. That's a good one. I love that one. Yes. The Matron's Militia. You're absolutely right. It kind of rhymes, doesn't it? I wish I could live up to 200 years, but to be honest, being alive right now kind of hurts. But that's a personal bullshit thing. Don't worry about it. All is good. Let's keep with the interview.
Alertan sobre la posibilidad de un golpe, pero también es verdad, fíjense, que Salvador Allende resalta una y otra vez la lealtad de las Fuerzas Armadas, pero Fidel Castro ya menciona la palabra fascismo, que es lo que
Yeah, we'll see how Salvador Allende is insisting on the "Yo, Kamazat, good to see you." Yeah, it's good to be on Twitch. It's good to be. The platform, that platform, whichever, it's fine. And yeah, we're seeing how Salvador Allende keeps insisting on how the army is loyal to the country, okay, but Fidel Castro is a little bit more skeptical, and given what happened, we know the ending to this, okay, but Salvador Allende also has a point, a very good point, but nobody expected the fucking CIA, Nobody expected that bullshit. They were kind of sniffing, something rotten there, but it was very difficult to pinpoint it back then, and considering the historical circumstances, thank you, Gamzots. We're here. We're here now. That's good. I hope you enjoy this.
Se vio justamente después del golpe. Vamos a ver la segunda parte del documental.
Okay, second
La
part.
motivación de los pueblos en su lucha a través de la historia es variadísima.
So the motivation of the peoples in their struggle across history is very diverse.
¿Cómo podría usted definir, comandante, la motivación de la lucha del pueblo cubano?
How could you define, Comandante, the motivation of the struggle of the Cuban country?
Bueno, yo creo que la motivación ha sido la misma. Los pueblos históricamente han luchado por su libertad. Esas fueron las causas.
I got distracted, sorry about that.
Documental.
La motivación de los pueblos en su lucha a través de la historia es variadísima.
So the motivation of
¿Cómo
the
podría usted
peoples, very diverse. How could you
comandante,
define,
la motivación de la lucha
motivation of
del
the
pueblo
struggle
cubano?
of the Cuban people?
Bueno, yo creo que la motivación ha sido la misma.
Motivation, in his opinion, it was the same.
Los pueblos históricamente han luchado por su libertad.
Historically, all peoples have been fighting for their own freedom, for liberation, right?
Esas fueron las causas, por ejemplo, de las luchas nacionales.
Causes of the national country struggles, meaning all the national Latin American struggles for independence from the kingdoms of Spain, Portugal, and England.
Si te remontas un poco más atrás, te encuentras siempre que hubo grandes luchas por la supervivencia, grandes luchas sociales dentro de cada uno de las sociedades.
So if you go a little bit further in time, further back in time, you can see a lot of struggle for survival and struggle within societies.
Que se han conocido a lo largo de la historia, porque aparte de la lucha de los pueblos por su existencia frente a otras comunidades,
Because besides the struggles of the peoples to exist and opposite to other communities,
han existido las luchas en el interior de las comunidades.
we had the struggles within the communities,
Como han sido las grandes luchas sociales.
like the big social struggles.
Digamos, por lo menos de acuerdo con nuestra concepción, que el gran motor de la historia han sido las luchas de las masas oprimidas.
I think Fidel is into engines, a lot of engines here. So nobody expects the Central Intelligence Agency. Our principal weapon is fear and surprise and fear. Our two principal weapons are fear, surprise, and an answer. You're making the Monty Python thing, okay? Oh yeah. Yo, Della Dragoness. So yeah, Fidel is into the engines right now, but he's talking about how the struggles of the people for their liberation, for their survival, have been the motor, the engine of history, basically.
Contra los opresores.
Struggle against oppressions.
Y eso está perfectamente estudiado y se conoce desde que existen las clases en la sociedad humana.
And that's fairly documented, and it's known in the societies throughout human history.
En nuestro país existía la doble motivación de un país sometido y humillado por el imperialismo.
So in Cuba there was a double motivation of a country that was submitted and humiliated by imperialism.
Y además, dentro de esa situación, una gran masa de campesinos sin tierra, una gran masa obrera explotada.
And on top of that, big mass of farmers without a land and exploited working class people. So, yeah, that adds up. It's a recipe for successful revolution, I would say.
Unas condiciones de miseria espantosa,
In awful and awful conditions, you know.
falta total de asistencia médica para las capas pobres de la población.
Lack of medical assistance for the poor, the lower ladders of society. Does it ring a bell, United States of America? No medical coverage for the poor. Does it ring a bell? Misery, you know, inequality. Does it ring a bell? Are those conditions for a revolution, people of the United States of America? Yeah, well, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, anywhere, you know, where there's capitalism, you know, at least we have, like, you know, public health care. But
Deficiente sistema educacional,
bad, deficient education system. Does it ring a bell?
porcentaje altísimo de analfabetos,
Very high percentage of people who cannot read, or you know,
falta de perspectiva para la juventud,
lack of perspective for the youth,
cientos de miles de desempleados, es
hundreds of thousands of unemployed people.
decir que había una situación social desesperada.
There was a desperate social situation. Does it ring a fucking bell, people? Does it look around? Just listen to these words by Fidel Castro and look around you now. Does it, you know, let it sit, okay? It's food for thought. I'm just saying.
Decir que la gran motivación de nuestro pueblo era la lucha por la vida.
¿Qué porcentaje de Fidel tenía usted desempleo?
We could say that the biggest struggle of our people was fighting for life. So yeah, I guess, you know, I guess that rings a bell to everybody, right? And now Allende is asking Fidel, what percentage of unemployment did you have there back then? Just a heads up, I'm in a toxic situation. I'm about to get punished for finally being fed up with it. If I dish just toxic parents, likely just unplug the internet to isolate me. Oh, just take it easy, okay? And there are more things than there are more things than the internet, okay, Dela? Just we feel for you, okay? Much love. Be okay, and figure it out, and yeah, be safe, please, and try and look for solutions. I hope you have comrades in your area who can, you know. I hope you find comrades in your area who can lend you a hand, okay? If you have friends or comrades, and go to your local, you know, union or whatever, seek for help, okay? People in the area. I would, if you would be in Madrid, I would fix you up with something, but you know, I'm far away. Sorry for that. Okay. Yeah, just be safe, okay? We love you. Be okay. Sorry about that. Let's continue with the I think this is really valuable knowledge, you know. I'm not downplaying what you're going through, Dela. Absolutely not. We all feel for you, okay? It's just I feel so powerless. I cannot do anything from here. I'm just this guy sitting and, you know. But I hope you enjoy it. No, don't worry about. Of course, you should. You know, take it off your chest. By all means, Dela. I mean, we're here for you, okay? Solidarity forever, and you know, find people in your area and try and don't be alone through this shit, okay? Don't be alone. Never alone. Never alone. Okay. And yeah, okay. Let's continue. So Salvador Allende was asking about the unemployment rate in Cuba before the revolution, okay?
Bueno, era muy grande. Se calcula que en determinados momentos del año había 500,000 de personas sin empleo.
It was very big, up to 500,000 people unemployed, because it's probably seasonal. Like back in the day, Cuba was a very dependent country, and there was a lot of monocultivation. They basically grew mostly sugar, so they depended on the sugar trade, to sugar cane, and to keep their economy running. So probably when the harvest season was over, a lot of people, found themselves without jobs, and probably wasn't super well paid, if you know what I mean. It was incredibly, as capitalism is, very authoritative, very absolutely tyrannical.
De una población que en ese momento tenía 6,5 millones de habitantes.
So of 500,000 people of a 6.5 million inhabitant, that's a huge rate of unemployment. From 6.5 million people, half of them, 500,000, was unemployed at a certain point. That's a huge rate of unemployment.
Donde la población trabajadora activa podía llegar a ser entre 1,5 millones y 2.
So 1.5, 2 million active population. So 6 million counts like, the children, retired people, and non-working people. But from the active population, that makes like almost a third of the active population. That's a huge unemployment rate.
Porque nosotros teníamos las zafras de caña, por lo menos cuando la revolución triunfa, ya habría una gran población excedente, que no la había al principio de la República cuando era mucho más reducida.
So they were basically depending on sugarcane, and there was a lot of people who couldn't find works. They were excedent. They weren't needed by the economy, right? So a lot of people were excluded from the economy itself in Cuba before the revolution.
No había crecido para nada la economía y en cambio se había duplicado la población.
So the economy was stalling, was not growing, was static, but population almost duplicated.
Eso engendró un desempleo temporal hasta de 500,000 de personas.
So yeah, because of the temporary situation of the seasonal situation of the work, it was like up to 500,000 people were unemployed at a point, basically, because the work was seasonal. It's absurd.
Y un desempleo permanente que pudiera ser de 150,000, 200,000 personas.
Still 150,000 to 200,000 people with permanent unemployment. So seasonal up to 500,000 people. But still, very high permanent unemployment.
Esa era en grandes rasgos la situación.
La experiencia política chilena es seguida con atención en todo el mundo.
So the Chilean political experience is followed attentively all over the world.
Es una experiencia que tiene obstáculos. ¿Cómo podría usted definir esos obstáculos?
So how could you define the obstacles that are facing that experience? I don't know why. What's this Japanese paper? That's a cool picture.
¿Te das cuenta, Fidel? 3 minutos para definir los obstáculos de una revolución que tiene que hacerse dentro de la democracia burguesa.
So Allende goes like, go figure. I got like 3 minutes to define the obstacles of a revolution that needs to stem from a bourgeois democracy. He's like, shit, man, that's a pickle. Damn, I like this guy.
Y con los cauces legales de esa democracia.
And within the legal limits of that democracy. I mean, how can you define those obstacles in like 3 minutes? That ain't gonna happen.
Sin embargo, tú sabes perfectamente bien.
However, you perfectly know that
Que hemos avanzado.
we have
Obstáculos.
advanced,
¿Nacen de qué? En primer lugar, de una oligarquía.
So where do these obstacles stem from? He says, like, firstly, from an oligarchy, right?
¿Nacen de qué? En primer lugar, de una oligarquía con bastante experiencia,
An oligarchy with a lot of experience,
inteligente, que
intelligent,
defiende muy bien sus intereses y que tiene
who knows how to defend their interests well,
el respaldo del imperialismo.
and who is backed by imperialist powers.
Dentro del marco de una institucionalidad en donde el Congreso tiene peso y atribuciones y en donde el gobierno
Within a frame in which the institutions, in which the framed within the institutions, they have a certain power, like in the Congress, and the government has a certain different power.
no tiene mayoría. De allí entonces que las dificultades sean bastante serias y hacen que el proceso revolucionario chileno, dentro de los marcos.
So when the government doesn't have like a big majority to make their word a law, that's part of the difficulties for to try and move within these frames, these legal frames.
De esta legalidad encuentre, ¿no?, cada día y en cada momento obstáculos para el avance del cumplimiento del programa de Unidad Popular. Por ejemplo,
So it is expected that within this legality and with all these obstacles, that to find every day to find any difficulties to implement the steps of the program sorry about that, of the program for the popular revolution, let's say the people's change that needed to happen. Okay.
fíjate tú, es cierto, obtuvimos el despacho unánime del Congreso de la ley que ha permitido nacionalizar el cobre.
So for instance, they managed to pass the law to nationalize the copper, to nationalize the copper industry, to keep it, public, basically.
Pero cuando hemos buscado el camino de comprar las acciones,
But when we were looking for the way to purchase those actions, those shares,
de los bancos y de los monopolios, ya nos hemos encontrado con obstáculos.
so trying to find a way to purchase shares from banks and monopolies, they've been facing a lot of obstacles.
Con resistencia, ¿no? Y el Parlamento exige que haya una ley que vaya determinando caso por caso o bien una lista determinada de aquellas empresas que deberían formar parte del área social.
So the law demands for them to make law into to make every case into the frame of the law. So they need to file a list of the companies that they deem they're necessary to make public, to go public. And Cuba is relatively peaceful. It's a really nice place. I got many friends there, and you gotta love Cuba. And there's this video by Van Empanada I would recommend about the democratic processes in Cuba, how Cuba works, the everyday government. There's a lot of more local power that people exert about their lives. There's a lot of voting. And the situation with housing, healthcare, and education it's unparalleled. It's not devoid of problems, and the economy is really wrecked because of the embargo. A country that is itself an island, doesn't have like any. It needs to find political partners under the thumb of the powerful military power of the United States, which is an imperial, power. It takes a lot of guts to survive in a geopolitical place that tough. Mostly when the Soviet Union fell, Cuba was in a really tight spot, and China came through, and that was good, geopolitically, good enough. And some European countries still want to commerce with Cuba, but the United States makes it so if you have like a boat, like a carrier boat, and you you log that you go in and into a Cuban harbor, you're not allowed to dock in a U.S. harbor, basically. So if you want to do business, and dock in a Cuban harbor, and they find in your registry that you've docked in a Cuban harbor, you're not allowed to do business in the United States anymore as a private owner of a cargo fleet. That's extortion, basically. That's extortion. That's fucked up. So of course the Cuban economy is trying to make do with whatever they can. Their alliance with Venezuela, the alliance, the UNASUR that was trying to happen, and then all the changes in government with all these reactionary bastards. It's very tough. The Antillean Confederation. Yeah, I'm not very aware of that one, but I'll have to research. USA should freely trade with them. We could exchange so much with them. Yeah, absolutely. We trade with Vietnam. Yeah, of course. But it's like the situation with cannabis. They classified it as Schedule 1 drug because they wanted to. But there is no positive criterion in which cannabis is a Schedule 1 drug. Alcohol is more dangerous, and it's absolutely legal. These are arbitrary things that happen arbitrarily. There's no reason. I want the USA out of everywhere. I want the USA to... Yeah, decolonize, absolutely. But, commercing, between equals. The embargoes at the... Yeah, leave the embargoes, It's ridiculous. That's an act of war, but in the soft power area. But soft power is power nonetheless. Where were we? Oh, they were talking about, the Chilean process. The difficulties of the Chilean.
Augusto Olivares, que las dificultades en el caso nuestro.
So I hope you understand, Augusto, that difficulties in our case
también están en relación con qué? Con una libertad de prensa que es mucho más que una libertad de prensa.
They're related to a freedom of the press that goes a little bit beyond the freedom of the press.
Que es un libertinaje de la prensa.
Which is absolute unleashed press. And the private press, were working actively against the government, the office of Salvador Allende, because there were private interests, And when it's absurd that the press is power. It's good that the press is free, but it needs to be also free from the economical powers that control it nowadays. The media right now is absolute bullshit. And I would address you to that video I made about the media, because why not? It took a lot of work, so go watch it if you can, because it took a lot of work. It made, I think it's one of the videos I've made that it took the most work. Theoretical Confederation of Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, as Spanish-speaking post-colonial Caribbean nations. Yeah, I would see that, but Puerto Rico needs to get out of the United States as soon as possible. Considering, how Puerto Rico has been beaten up by several, consider the Molotov. Yeah, definitely. But República Dominicana it's just a difficult country politically. República Dominicana, it has more to do with Haiti than with Cuba, to be honest. But yeah, of course, they have big Afro-Caribbean roots. It would make sense, but the people in República Dominicana, they would have to really, really, really step up, because situation politically in the Dominican Republic is fucked up. So talking about the press and the media, who were privately owned, and they were making a mess. They were making things unstable. That's one of the things, the right wing, when there's a progressive type of government in place, the right wing goes out of their lengths to destabilize the situation. They don't want to play fair. They're not interested in playing fair because the right wing only wants power. And this is one of the lessons, one of the takeaways we can take from these absolute gods of politics right here.
Se deforma, se miente, se calumnia, se tergiversa.
Yeah, they lie through their teeth. They manipulate. Yeah.
Los medios de difusión con que cuentan son poderosos.
And they have powerful media with them.
Periodistas vinculados a intereses foráneos y a grandes intereses nacionales.
So there are journalists who are directly linked with the foreign interests and okay, back to work. Zods, have a great one. Kama Zods, Altar, fantastic comrade. Subscribe to Kama Zods' channel. You're very on the other side of the planet, motherfucker. I can never catch you. I love you. You're fantastic. Voy a intentar hacer streams en español este domingo. Sorry, I'm gonna switch to Spanish for a moment. Este domingo voy a hacer en el canal de Fisky Fus. Vamos a estrenar un nuevo show llamado ¿cómo se llama? Coño, no me acuerdo. Vamos a estrenar un nuevo show fantástico donde Fisky Fus, Chiniquil y yo vamos a ver vídeos abismales y echarnos unas risas y puede estar muy gracioso este domingo, no sé a qué hora. So sorry about the Spanish break. I had to address Ed Marino, but we'll figure it out. We're gonna make some shows in Spanish. Duolingo, don't fail me now. I mean, I like Duolingo. They have like courses in Spanish, but in a way they put like, I mean, they have many courses of languages. I remember doing my Norwegian Duolingo course and seeing way too many references to Israel that were a little bit unnecessary, if you know what I'm saying. And Israel is an apartheid religious state. They're practicing ethnic cleansing with the Palestinians, who are like the rightful of the owners of that land. And I advocate for shutting peacefully down the Israeli state. Disarming Israel all the way, and putting together a Palestinian government that is fully democratic and it's fully secular, where everybody's allowed to practice whichever religion they want, with freedom, with safety, and work slowly towards a much desired peace. But peace in the Middle East goes through secular democratic governments with freedom of religion and equality and eliminating poverty. It's not about a religious ethno-state, like Israel, which is absolutely oppressive and militarized. And Sunday is gonna be a lot of fun. I'm so looking forward to Sunday. Sunday is gonna be a blast. It's a Teatro del Misterio 3000 or something like that. It's like the Teatro del Misterio. No, it was I don't remember. Damn it. Let me check it. I'm gonna check it out now. I'm so curious about it. Okay. Let's go to my Twitter messages. That's the closest we have. Oh my glob. The computer is struggling because I got so many windows open. Comuna del Misterio 3000. Sorry, I forgot. The Commune of Mystery 3000. It was like mystery theater type of show, but it's a cat, skull with the brains coming out, and a leftist loudmouth, absolute uncle energy like yours truly, basically. And it's gonna be all in Spanish, but it's gonna be right-wingers are hovering big red anti-Semite button. Yeah, definitely. But it's about, being Jewish. It's a religion. It's being normal people, with this or that religion. Being Jewish is like being Catholic or being Muslim or Buddhist or, it's a religion that people have. It's no big deal, They had to go through as an identity, they had to go through all the awful things that a guy with bad mustache, and their brown shirt, pieces of absolute shit, were doing to them. But that's an identity. Those were real stories of real people who suffered. But fascism seeks power, absolute power. So they're a death cult. Those fascists, they're a death cult. That when they run out of people to exterminate, they'll exterminate each other. They seek absolute power. It's an adoration of power. It has nothing to do with which religion you profess. Of course, they targeted, Jewish people. They made them like the scapegoat of choice. But it could have been anything. And it was a lot of people who were not, The Polish people were treating like absolute, Yes, gato con corbata, cat with a tie. Wonderful cat. Wonderful cat. Fiskifus. And Chiniquil, the skeleton, which is the avatar is a skeleton, but Chiniquil is the worm that you can find in the bottles of mezcal. I'm so being sidetracked right now. Let's get back on track because we're not gonna finish this. Yeah, cat with a tie. Wonderful cat with a tie. Okay, so they're talking about the opposition and the press, the power of the press, and how the press was a bit of a joke because they were subject to both external imperial powers and internal economic powers, okay?
No solo no reconocen, sino que deforman, repito, las iniciativas nuestras.
It's not that they don't recognize their initiative, but they twist them. They twist what they say or what they try to implement, to make people's lives better.
Teniendo nosotros que respetar las conquistas que el pueblo alcanzó y la cual, lógicamente, hace uso y mal uso la oposición al gobierno popular.
And they have to respect, the conquests that the people reached by themselves. And of course, the opposition is going to use that against them.
Por eso, y tú lo has dicho también, y lo has reconocido, que las dificultades que se nos presentan a nosotros son bastante grandes.
Son admirables las dificultades de ustedes.
So, and that's why, and you said it yourself, he says to Fidel, that you recognize as well, that our difficulties are very special and very numerous. And he says, yeah, you guys are admirable, basically.
Ya ves tú.
Yeah,
Presidente, y a pesar de esos obstáculos se puede llevar adelante el proceso.
Y se avanza.
So despite of all of those obstacles, the process is still going on. And he says, yes, it's advances.
Ya lo he dicho, el cobre es nuestro, el hierro es nuestro, salir.
So the copper is ours, the iron is ours, the salt is ours.
El acero es nuestro. Es decir,
the steel is ours. That means
riquezas básicas las hemos conquistado.
We conquered the basic stuff already. Let's go back to the chat. Please don't sidetrack me so much. Fiskifus is fantastic. Fiskifus is absolutely fantastic. Chiniquil is fantastic and quite a soldier of our revolutionary. He's the infiltrate, the spy. He really he's the terror of right wingers. A problem still today. The press may be free from political power, yes, which is good, but it's not free from the way more powerful economic powers. Yeah. Absolutely. That's we need. It's possible to implement mechanisms to try and some initiatives happen, and I think it's. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Rendis. I'm very distracted person myself too. But yeah, we coming up with systems to control, to guarantee freedom of the press on one hand, and control manipulation of the press by private powers, which do things under the table, because a public power can do things through officials, so you can tell. But the private power manipulation is more insidious. It happens here on these platforms, these hell shit platforms from hell, where those who get, who pay for the ads, They get to decide who stays on the platform and who doesn't. So on mainstream media, it's about manipulating. We're gonna, nudge you in this or that direction. Whoever are the owners, they introduce their bias and they impose the bias on the journalists. Journalists right now are underpaid and overworked, and they don't have any freedom. There's no freedom of the press because the journalists themselves, they have no editorial freedom. Cuban revolutionary, and this whole conversation, because it's so relevant, to when you're trying to make processes to make things improve, all the opposition, how they work against you, and what you need to be, we all need to be facing, when things happen, So, yeah.
Pero aquí hay una cuestión importante sobre esta pregunta que hace Olivares.
So about this question, that you made, there's an important matter here.
Acerca de la vía y de las dificultades y de la marcha del proceso.
About this question about the way and the difficulties and the march of the process.
Y es que el pueblo chileno, en virtud de esa tradición, de la estabilidad de sus instituciones, de sus partidos de izquierda organizados,
is that the Chilean people, in virtue of their tradition and the will of their institutions and their history. Whoops, did I what?
Que logró hacer un aglutinamiento de fuerza suficiente para obtener la victoria en el campo electoral.
They managed to get enough critical mass of people to earn an electoral victory.
Y que efectivamente ha emprendido una serie de cambios de estructura muy importantes.
And which has absolutely led a series of structural changes that are absolutely important.
Y algunos de gran trascendencia histórica.
Some of them of big historical transcendence.
Como la recuperación del cobre, del salitre, el control de los bancos. Todo eso.
Like the recovery, like getting the copper and the salt back, and the control of the banks, those are policies that we need right now in our countries. Nationalizing key industries and setting control over banks so the banks don't run amok. The financial sector is creating fake ass money, that we need to pay from our future wages, from our future labor. We're paying for 80s cocaine. Okay? And luxury boats and Rolls Royces and whatever absolute trash they were taking in the 80s, those pieces of absolute shit on the financial powers, Wolf of Wall Street, all that bullshit. That was, the producers wanted to make it into an homage while the director was trying to make it into a warning. It's a warning. I know, Riandis. I keep telling Chinic we'll put some subtitles. That it's a lot of labor, I understand. It's a shit ton of labor.
Esas medidas han afectado profundamente los intereses de los monopolios de Estados Unidos.
So those measures that the Chilean government put in place and the Chilean process was, putting in place one by one, they've been affecting the interest of the big monopolies that live in the United States, are based in the United States, we could say.
Y han afectado también intereses de los sectores oligárquicos del país.
And they've affected the interest of the oligarchic sectors of the country itself, which were the ones who colluded to overthrow and make the coup d'etat and the bloody dictatorship that followed.
Entre ellos las medidas de aplicación a mucho mayor ritmo, de la ley de reforma agraria.
The agrarian reform was one of the biggest factors for this unrest of the elites and the international, imperial powers.
Y esta situación engendra una gran resistencia de esos intereses, que además controlan, como decía el presidente, grandes recursos de lucha, partidos también tradicionales.
So this situation really generates unrest and disinterest, and generates like a little bit of a vector, for them to discourage, the advancement of this revolutionary process.
Experiencia, habilidad, un control mayoritario de los medios de divulgación masiva, experiencia en el arte de sembrar los temores, de explotar la ignorancia, todos esos factores constituyen obstáculos formidables.
So he's describing the obstacles in which the control of the mass media and all the power that these people have, they're absolute major obstacles that need to be taken into account. That's what Fidel is saying. Fidel is incredibly strategic here. So that's very important. They're both, very high level, these people.
Fíjate, Fidel, además, y perdón, inclusive hay que reconocerlo, algunos de esos partidos han logrado en los sectores de pobladores, en la gente con menos conciencia tener arraigo, en algunos sectores del campesinado.
So, Allende is pointing out that these interests and these parties, they even managed to seduce people, people from the working class, people from the lower classes, which are not supposed to be defending those interests. Does it ring a bell? Is it some orange man maybe who seduced some racist, people in some imperial country that we know of? I don't know.
Que una masa en Chile de un porcentaje alto de analfabetos.
There's a high percentage of people who cannot read or write.
Gente que no hemos podido inclusive todavía incorporar plenamente.
So they couldn't reach to those people, and not many of those people, right? They were trying, by organizing, but you can do as much as you can, and with the budget that you have, reaching to all of those people. That's what it's what we're trying to do here, right? To reach the maximum amount of people, and that's what I would encourage all of you, to do on your own lives, and try and reach out to people and talk about things with people, and trying to have people, consider all the problems that we have and all the solutions that we can do, all the things that we can do when we're together. And that's important for revolutionary processes worldwide. I guess that's one of the universal recipes, is get people on board. The how, it depends on your locality, but, the what, it's, key.
Que la lucha del pueblo.
Bueno, y yo tengo una impresión que esa resistencia acude a los procedimientos clásicos, además desarrollados, y son procedimientos que nosotros calificamos de fascistas.
So he's saying, Fidel is pointing out that resistance, those economical powers and those international interests, they always tend to use the classical methods. And he's pointing out that these people tend to use fascism as a method. Ultraderecha, yeah, it's a far right. It's Spanish for far right. It sounds like very badass. Ultra right. It sounds like a supervillain or something.
Y que tratan, por tanto, de ganar masa. Masa con la demagogia, si es posible, en los sectores más atrasados de las capas humildes.
So these fascist methods, they try to gain momentum with the masses, and they try to attract the humble and most uneducated people with their big media and their big budgets, which is, that's basically, I don't know, Tim Pool, Jordan Peterson, they're being pretentious and scaring people into submission. One of the best tools of the right, or the most powerful tools that the right has, is fear. They make people scared. They tell people stories with goodies and baddies, and they don't have to be true. They just have to be compelling. And that's what we have to fight against. That's the propaganda we need to undo. They're fake-ass stories. A narrative is incredibly powerful because it manipulates the feelings of these people. These people don't have to see... Most of these people don't see the bigger picture. And what we're trying all the time is to appeal to the bigger picture. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, the minorities are coming for you, you know. Don't worry about it, blood donuts. Blood and donuts, don't worry about it. You know, if you can read the Spanish, you're probably very, very, very equipped to eventually speak it. You know, I would encourage you to keep going. You're on the right track. You can totally do it. If I can speak English, you know what I'm saying? Nobody expects the reactionary right. Our principal weapon is fear, surprise, and fear. Monty Python, classic. So yeah, they're convincing, you know, the lowest classes, the what Marx would call the lumpen proletariat, you know, who are not educated, who don't see the bigger picture, but they are like you know, they hypnotize people with the narratives, stories. They manipulate people's feelings, and one important feeling for the far right is fear. So we need to counter fear. Say, you know, see these people, they told you they're scary, they're super friendly people. See us, you know, we the leftists, we're trying to help. We're here to help. We're here to help you out of the gutter. And we know shit is bad, but you can count on me, okay? That's what we need to be saying to everyone around us. Not to, you know, strange people in the internet, you know, people who we don't know. I mean, yeah, you have my heart, all of you, all okay? You have all my respect, and you know my hands, you know, my palms are here. What you see is what you get, all right? But the people around us say, "Yo, yeah, we're so trying so damn hard to help. Yeah, we're trying hard, but you know, when many of us are trying to help, we don't even have to try that hard. We're gonna help." But you know, we need to undo that fake narrative and say that Pied Piper from the right is lying to you, and the reality is much less epic, much more warm, and much more. The reality of us is much more helpful. You know, about real life, real people helping each other get out of the gutter that the powerful, you know, put us in. So, anyway, go back to the documentary. Really get sidetracked.
Y ganar masa en las capas medias.
And they gained a lot of masses within the middle class. Middle class, he's not saying class, and he is absolutely right. It's the middle layers of the population. Because there's two classes, the working class and the bourgeoisie, that's it. So the middle layers and the lower layers of society is where they gain traction, you know, and the middle, the lower layers for lack of preparation, you know, lack of ability to read, which right now we don't. We need, let's say, lack of media literacy, if you know what I mean. Educating people into media literacy right now is the new reading. Of course, more people can read right now, but there are more sophisticated ways to manipulate people with media, and we need people, you know, to be aware of those manipulations, just to be a little bit more resilient. We're all being manipulated by media all the time. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to convince you, but I hope I'm not making a big of a mess, because I'm not that good. It is what it is. I'm trying. And I found this, and I wanted to share this with you. I wasn't even planning on streaming today, so here you go.
Y entonces ahora falta una cuestión por demostrar. Si esos intereses se resignarán pasivamente a los cambios de estructura que la Unidad Popular y el pueblo chileno han querido llevar adelante.
So there's one thing that needs to be demonstrated right now, and I think this is key. I think Fidel Castro is making here a prediction, and it's to see if those power are gonna just let this revolutionary process happen, which they didn't. You know, if you go back in hindsight, you go like, oh shit, he was making a prediction, right? So,
Y es de esperar si nosotros vamos a analizar teóricamente esta cuestión.
And it's to be expected if we analyze this matter in theoretically. Like, yeah, it's to be expected that these people are not going to be happy with it and are going to do something about it. And fuck, they did.
que hagan resistencia fuerte e incluso hagan resistencia violenta.
So it's expected from them to make a resistance, to make a hard resistance, and he said to make a violent resistance.
De manera que ese es un factor que no se puede descontar en absoluto de la actual situación chilena.
So that's a factor that we must take into account, considering the Chilean situation.
A mi juicio, que es el juicio de un visitante, que viene de un
Which is my opinion, the opinion of a visitor who's coming from
país que está en otra condición.
Who's coming from a country that has another struggle.
Que es como un viaje de un mundo a otro mundo.
And it's like a little bit of a traveling from one world to another.
Tú lo has dicho, y yo creo que es muy justo. Los revolucionarios nunca han generado la violencia. Han sido los sectores y los grupos golpeados.
And he's saying, like, yeah, absolutely true. It's never the revolutionaries, the ones who initiated the violence. If you consider the downtrodden groups.
Por la revolución, lo que generan la violencia en la contrarrevolución.
So if you see the groups that have been, let's say, prejudiced by the revolution, it's because of the violence of the counter-revolutionaries. It's never done by the revolutionaries.
Mantuvieron los sistemas por la violencia y lo defienden por la violencia.
They kept their systems. Fidel says they kept their systems with violence, and they're defending them with violence.
Comandante.
You see, violence is not always sprouting from the barrel of a gun, right? It's not. It's violence can be systemic. You feel it in your bones. I don't even have to tell you how systemic violence works, because all of you are feeling it in your bones right now. So here comes the next, chunk of the thing.
Tanto usted como el presidente Allende se han referido a los obstáculos que encuentra el proceso revolucionario chileno.
So both of you have addressed the obstacles that the Chilean revolutionary process is encountering.
¿Usted podría hablar de los obstáculos que ha encontrado el proceso revolucionario cubano?
Can you talk about the reaction, the obstacles that the Cuban revolutionary processes have found?
Mira, nuestra lucha se inicia.
He goes like, check it out. Our struggle starts
en medio de un régimen tiránico y sangriento.
Amidst of a tyrannical and bloody regime.
Que mantenía el poder mediante una represión brutal.
Keeping their power through brutal repression. That's Batista, by the way. Not the wrestler.
Ninguna de las circunstancias políticas que tuvieran similitud con la situación de Chile.
So it was a very different situation than the political circumstances of Chile.
Totalmente distinto.
Entonces se desarrolla una guerra revolucionaria.
And that's Fidel when he was young. Police file. Yeah, we're feeling it. I know. So there's this historical situation developing, okay?
Se llega al gobierno mediante una guerra victoriosa del pueblo.
So these people get to the government by victorious war, led by the people.
En esas condiciones la llegada al gobierno ya había suprimido en el proceso de la lucha y al desplomarse virtualmente todo el sistema, los obstáculos principales. No.
So most of the main obstacles had been suppressed by the end of the world, by the very virtue of the collapse of the former regime under the war.
Quedó aquel parlamento fraudulento que había establecido como toda una máscara.
So the fraudulent parliament that was left, it had established some sort of a mask.
Para darle alguna forma legal al gobierno de Batista.
To give like some sort of a veneer of legitimacy to the Batista regime.
Todo aquello se vino abajo con el régimen. En el momento de la derrota huyeron casi todos del país.
So all that political system came down when the war was won by the revolutionaries, and they fled the country. Those are basically the gusanos that we see in Florida today, descendants of those evil bastards.
Y entonces se estableció un gobierno revolucionario donde El Consejo de Ministros tenía las facultades legislativas y ejecutivas.
So they established a revolutionary government where the Council of Ministers had executives and legislative capacities. That's a very, I would say, very even Stalinist type of thing. But they were the avant-garde, and the revolution was just done. Like, don't worry about it. You know, there are many democratic processes that were established after the revolution had seeded in the first place.
Eso facilitó mucho la formulación de las leyes y la adopción de las medidas pertinentes.
So having this council of ministers, you know, sitting this board of ministers, having that much power in the first place, you know, facilitated a lot to create like a legal framework and the reconstruction of a social system after the war. Because again, and this is very specific to the Cuban circumstances, coming out of the bloody regime of Batista and going all the way into guerrilla war, which, by the way, you say guerrilla, not gorilla. Gorilla is a funky ape, very strong but very gentle and wonderful, furry friends. But guerrilla is the name of the tactics.
Hubo lucha, desde luego.
There was struggle, of course. There was resistance.
Pero desde luego el obstáculo principal nuestro fue de orden exterior.
But our main obstacle was of external order, albeit geopolitical powers, you know, balances and probably attacks, you know.
Lógicamente de inmediato con los intereses imperialistas.
Because they clashed immediately with the imperialist interests.
Y entonces el imperialista constituyó la oposición fundamental, una formidable oposición a nuestro país.
So the imperialists constituted the fundamental opposition to their country. So, yeah. That's the United States of America, the land of the free. My sorry leftist ass. Land of the free. Yeah.
Y que además utilizaba los factores internos.
And they were also infiltrating internal factors.
Las clases, los terratenientes,
classes and big landowners.
Los elementos más reaccionarios inmediatamente comenzó a organizarlo y a ver.
They started organizing the most reactionary movements.
Vertebrarlo para una lucha que en un momento dado fue ideológica, pero que durante muchos años fue violenta.
For a struggle that in a given moment became ideological, but for many years it was a violent struggle. So they were probably practicing terrorism, basically, financed and organized by the, you know, local big landowners. And hola, Silver Spook! Oh, so good to have you with us. Oh, you gotta run. Don't worry about it. I'll put this up on YouTube later. Okay, so you can watch the rest of the recording. Yeah, no props. Thank you, little red Ethan. Which I thought it was Johannes Ethan, the teacher at the Bauhaus School. Which I don't know. Check it out. It's good stuff. So yeah, I mean the imperialists were really fighting the Cuban Revolution, you know, from within and from without, with the help of the big landowners, you know, from that sugar mono cultivation, you know, bullshit. So there's that.
Fidel, allá también el imperialismo controlaba la tierra.
El imperialismo controlaba la tierra.
The imperialism controlled the land. It was like this big fruit company that was. I don't remember the name of the company. I don't know if any of you in the chat remember this name of the. I think it's some company of the Americas or something like that, or the fruit something banana something. There was, you know, there was a big private company that was heavily intertwined. United Fruit Company. Thank you so much, Silver Spook. Very, very fast. Thank you so much. Yeah. So this United Fruit Company was in cahoots, you know, with the government of the United States, you know, to subdue so many Latin American countries, you know, and they were exploiting the big sugar cane, you know, plantations. That was, yeah, you know, you know how it goes.
El cobre de nuestro es la caña de azúcar. Y la caña se cultivaba en las mejores tierras.
See, sugarcane was the Cuban copper, like he said. So let's say the Chilean had the copper mines, and which was like the big thing, that sustained most of the economy, exporting so much copper, and Cuba had and it comes from colonial times, it's similar to Hawaii, sugarcane and pineapple. Yeah, U.S. back cool to crush indigenous people. There you go, to maximize profits. You know the drill, Silver Spook. You know so much about, colonized peoples. And we're watching these two giants, Salvador Allende and Fidel Castro, talking about their issues with the counter-revolutionaries in their own localities. I hope it gives everyone some insight, about what to do. So yeah, they had their sugar cane, and it was exploited by transnational corporations back in the day. They're not much different today, right?
Y las mejores tierras cañeras eran de la United Fruit Company.
There you go. That's the culprit. Ding, 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 ding. United Fruit Company. They own the best sugarcane lands.
Otras numerosas compañías de Estados Unidos.
Another United States companies. Yeah, definitely comparable to the East India Company that the British,
Unidos. De manera que nuestra ley de reforma agraria nos hace chocar de inmediato contra los intereses imperialistas.
So their agrarian reform laws made them clash immediately with imperialist economic interests. Again, that land was sold by the pennies by the fucking Batista cronies. That's fucked up. Cuba used to be the backyard and the sugarcane plantation money making, and also the whorehouse and the casinos. I don't know. It's fucked up. You want to see a representation in media? It could be like the Godfather. I think it's part 2, or I think it's part 2 where they go to Cuba for a while. The mobsters,
Hice esa pregunta porque es distinto. Aquí controlaron las minas.
And now, Salvador Allende is pointing that it's different there.
Allá controlaban las tierras.
Exactamente.
And that one who like in Chile they took control of the mines, and in Cuba they took control of the land.
La diferencia era que nosotros no teníamos esos obstáculos de que hablaba.
The difference is that in Cuba they didn't have those obstacles that he was talking about, because when they waged the war and won the revolution, all the media, all the law, all the legal frames, all the obstacles, that Salvador Allende had to face, the movement, the Chilean movement had to face, because Salvador Allende is just one guy anyway. It was a big movement. And they had to face all those other obstacles. But, the reward was not having to wage a war and making it into a process. So, you got to weigh your circumstances. These are two approaches, and both of them are valid. And, what's unfortunate is what, came after. But nobody really expected that motherfucker. And I'm hoping, I'm hoping, Lorcan, you come again with a Monty Python reference, because nobody expected the Chilean coup d'etat. Okay, you think the most beautiful thing about Cuba is the agrarian revolution, the special period, and organic systems. Yeah, they made a lot of really good things, despite of the difficulties. It's amazing.
El presidente, indiscutiblemente. Lo que sí tuvimos fue una lucha muy frontal del imperialismo que ha durado estos 13 años.
So they've been struggling against the imperialist forces for about 13 years before after the revolution happened. So it's not that like they were devoid of problems. They didn't have the same kind of problems. Different models entail different problems.
¿Sigue siendo el imperialismo el obstáculo principal en el proceso?
Nosotros diríamos que
It is, and the journalist he asks, is imperialism still the main obstacles? And of course, Fidel laughed a little bit. Yeah, we would say
El obstáculo de orden objetivo fundamental es ese.
that the objective fundamental obstacle is that imperialism for both Cuba and and which is the most imperialistic country in the world right now? Refresh my memory. Does it start with a U, follows with a S, and ends with an A? I think so, right? I think that's about it. I don't know. The revolution propaganda of Cuba paints it as a suburban American dream when it really wasn't. Yeah, I mean, Cuba is a complex reality, but everything is propaganda anyway. It always starts with UK before that. Definitely. The empire of the United Kingdom was abysmal, before this. Glad they came in decline, they became the Brexit island. Poor people. I feel for you. I hope, that Ireland becomes one soon. Anyway, the United Blank, the failed state of America. Yeah, we're gonna make it happen, people. Don't worry about it. It's gonna be rough, okay? But if you're ready, we're gonna make it. That's why I'm trying to share this. I hope it's helpful, okay?
Luego hay obstáculos de orden subjetivo. Nosotros no hemos tenido tiempo todavía de desarrollar toda una nueva generación de técnicos, de ingenieros.
And that's an important subjective obstacle that they have to face. It's like they hadn't still time to develop new generations of technicians and engineers. That's why Cuba right now has an army of doctors that go, healing everyone around the world. Cuban doctors around the world tending to the beginning of the COVID pandemic, for instance. It was Cuba who was sending doctors. The United States sends drone strikes and missiles. Cuba sends doctors. What a difference it makes, doesn't it?
Eso llevan 20 años por lo menos. Hemos trabajado muy duramente en eso, pero nos encontramos niveles de ignorancia.
So they at that point, they were really working on educating people and creating engineers and specialized people. They invested in education. They invested on people being, heavily prepared. If we don't like the mass line, the mass line will, yeah. Fractured precious states of the Great Turtle Island. There's a Republican movement in Scotland. I wonder if Cork and the Isle of Man will break off too from a Celtic confederation. That would be cool. Leave the English alone. It's the English and the Welsh who are being absolute conservative a-holes. I'm just saying. So, yeah.
Niveles de subdesarrollo técnico.
Yeah, they had to rise from technical and underdevelopment levels, in Cuba. So they were working on getting...
Fidel, en el campo médico, te hago esa pregunta porque tú sabes que yo soy médico.
Sí.
¿Cuántos médicos tenían y cuántos se fueron de Cuba?
So how many doctors did they have and how many doctors leave Cuba? Because Allende just mentioned he was a doctor as well. So how many doctors did you have and how many doctors left Cuba?
Tenemos 6,000 y ellos
They had 6,000
lograron llevarse de Cuba 3,000 médicos.
and they managed to take 3,000 doctors away from Cuba, the reactionary.
Nos redujeron a la mitad.
¿Y han logrado ahora?
Ahora tenemos 8,000.
They cut them in half, but now they had 8,000. So they had more doctors than they had before by just, forming, educating doctors, educating people, education building. The Cuban Revolution became very famous and very hyped because of the war, because of their success in defeating the brutal and fascistic Batista regime. But look what they were focused on after winning the war. Educating, building, and helping people. That's never spoken about. Everything, we're brainwashed to think like Hollywood movie bullshit, There's an initial premise, and it goes to the middle section, and then the happy ending, and happily ever after. That never happens. Life is a process. It's continuous. So a revolution needs to take into account both the destruction of the old order and the construction of the new one, and helping people. It's our revolution. Otherwise, it would be a shitty reactionary revolution, and we don't want any of that. We want to liberate people.
Extraordinario. Y más de 5.000 estudiando en la universidad, estudiando con una gran calidad y bien repartido. Por eso nuestros servicios médicos hoy son realmente, pero muy buenos.
So they had like over 5,000 more studying at the university, and they're really, 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 education, literacy building up. So, I don't know, right now, the revolution from the table. Yeah, one step at a time, and you just need to be careful about doing it, and consider that, just the fighting process is it's the first step. There are construction, construction in the news is always forgotten, but it's critical, definitely. Food sovereignty will provoke the capitalists. Yeah, if you managed to eliminate the food deserts in the United States, which are so absolute, abysmal, that's absolute dismal, food deserts. How can you have full neighborhoods or full cities, where people cannot buy fresh food? Get to build right now, urban gardens, have, food autonomy for people. I don't know. Promote, good things, good practices. Let's keep. Did I miss a pun? No. That's the foundation of a revolution. Once we build that, we can grow from there. Pun intended. Okay. You know the drill. We can grow it. We can push the seeds and then water them, and they will grow.
Dentro de nuestra situación de recursos materiales, y mejoran día a día, y se ganan importantes batallas contra las enfermedades.
So they're improving on a daily basis, winning important battles against diseases.
Hemos erradicado muchas enfermedades infecciosas, y incluso la tuberculosis está prácticamente casi erradicada en nuestro país.
So they at that point they had almost even eradicated tuberculosis. They were eradicating diseases left and right. They were working hard into healing and making things better for the people.
Numerosos hospitales antituberculosos ya se están transfiriendo a policlínicos, hospitales materno-infantiles.
So there's less and less people sick by tuberculosis. So tuberculosis specialized hospital were, transformed into general hospitals and maternities and whatnot. Okay. Now people from all over the Caribbean come to Havana to study medicine. Yeah, that's how it goes.
De manera que ese es un ejemplo. Hicieron lo mismo con los ingenieros.
El proceso.
So that's an example, and they did the same with the engineers. Now the journalist is asking about the process.
Chileno ha sido distinto. Aquí no ha habido éxodo de profesionales, pero en cambio el drenaje de cerebro, de capacidad técnica, ha sido extraordinario.
So the Chilean process was different because there was no exodus of professionals, but there was also a drainage in knowledge that happened like over time. They were facing a very different situation, okay?
Y ese es uno de los problemas de los países en vías de desarrollo.
Pero es otro tipo, es un drenaje sistemático de las mejores, de la gente más preparada.
And he's saying like that's what's keeping us like an underdeveloped, that drainage of knowledge, of technical acumen, of education, of formation, not formation, but not formation like people in a row, but people getting to know the knowledge, the education of people, that's Fidel was saying that that's absolutely a systemic issue, that we need to address.
Mientras que nosotros nos hicieron un drenaje específico y masivo.
Well, they had the systemic drainage of knowledge. What but what they did to Cuba was like a very flash. They took away doctors, engineers, took away whatever they could. They basically ran away, like the rats they are, like the fucking gusanos they are, and they took with them professionals and stuff. So they really needed to step up, and they did, in my opinion, they did a great job. Despite all of the economic embargo, the political situations, coup attempts, assassination attempts on behalf of the fucking Bay of Pigs invasion. That was, pitiful, which is, as we said before, history rhymes, what happened recently in Venezuela with those mercenaries they sent that were like so pathetic, and they were caught by fishermen and army officials, in Venezuela. So, you know how it is. The USA is a piece of absolute trash, basically, historically and currently.
Para llevarnos no solo con los mejores cerebros, sino llevar el máximo número de técnicos y de obreros calificados.
So they took away with them the maximum number of technicians and qualified work people.
Pero es extraordinario lo que han logrado.
And then Salvador Allende says, yeah, but what you did was extraordinary.
Siendo presidente, con la visita del primer ministro Fidel Castro, se ha producido un repunte de los sectores adversos a su gobierno.
Okay, so following the visit of Fidel Castro to Chile, there was like a spike of the on the opposition to their government.
Cantina de llamar sectores adversos.
And he's saying like, yeah, and you still call them opposition, right? And they laugh.
¿Te das cuenta, Fidel?
Es la prensa de que tú hablabas.
The press you were talking about before, right? The sold out press, The A-team got caught by the socialist fishermen of Venezuela. Yeah, you know that? The A-team, in reality, are not so much fun, I mean? The series is kind of fun, but the reality of it, oh my God.
¿Y acaso cree que es objetivo llamar con tanta finura?
And he was like, I have a better name for them. And the journalist go like, yeah, but they not be super objective. And he was like, do you think it's objective to call them something so nice?
A la antítesis de este proceso.
Do you think is it objective to call nice names on the antithesis of a project that is trying to help people? We cannot be soft with the fascists. And, Bay of Chuds. Bay of Chuds. That's a good one. That's a great one. We cannot really be charitable towards fascism and the reaction. Rian, the A-Team was a series, a 1980 series about four mercenaries who were veterans from the Vietnam War and were now guns for hire. And it's a funny 80s show. It's sorry about, the older people reference. You got some research to do. You're going to have fun. I mean, it's a goofy, silly series where they never kill anybody, and they always reuse that footage of a Jeep or a car that's rolling over or a ramp, yeah. Yeah, but it was, I don't know how much propagandist it was. Yeah, Mr. T's big break, absolutely. We're old. Deal with the old people. We are valuable. I swear. I pity the fool who doesn't get that reference. Just kidding. Okay, let's move on with this. It's a very valuable document. I'm getting sidetracked all the time. I'm sorry for this.
Justamente eso es lo que quería entrar en la pregunta. ¿Qué piensa usted, presidente, que se produciría en Chile si la contrarrevolución se alzara?
So the journalist is asking President Allende what does he think that would happen in Chile if there was a coup, right?
En primer lugar,
first of all,
creo que es útil destacar,
I think it's useful to point out,
como usted lo ha dicho, Augusto Olivares,
as you said, Mr. Augusto Olivares,
que se ha reproducido el proceso con la presencia de Fidel. Es lógico.
That the process has been reproduced with the presence of Fidel, as it's logical.
De manera que yo tengo la culpa, ¿no?
No.
Sam, and Fidel goes like, so it's my fault, isn't it? And he goes, no.
Pero ellos saben lo que significa la presencia de Cuba y la presencia de Fidel Castro
But they know the meaning of the presence of Cuba and the presence of Fidel Castro
en Chile.
in Chile.
Ellos tienen conciencia de que es vitalizar el proceso revolucionario latinoamericano.
They're conscious of what it is to revitalize the process of the revolutionary process in Latin America. That's the same thing that happened, with Chavez, the joining of the creation of UNASUR with Chavez and Lula, and all the nicer governments, Evo and Evo Morales in Bolivia. We wish that Evo comes back, or not even when it's not Evo himself, but at least the mass goes back. Janine Áñez and their awful party were a fringe party in the parliament, and they had absolutely no right to put themselves in a government in this illegitimate position, So whatever reforms they've done, they should be legitimate and illegal, and these people should really see justice. I'm just saying.
Ellos tienen la evidencia de que la unidad de nuestros pueblos es un factor indiscutiblemente que fortalece la voluntad y la decisión de los pueblos para romper la dependencia.
So Salvador Allende is saying that the presence of Fidel Castro in Chile, it puts on the spotlight the high value of the liberation processes of the peoples in all over Latin America, basically.
Además, es indiscutiblemente contribuir a terminar con el aislamiento intencionado de Cuba.
And it's important to try and contribute to ending the intentional isolation of Cuba. There you go. They're trying to finish the blockade. So there's so many interests of the CIA, in here. It's ludicrous that they had to go, and it's.
Por eso que ha recrudecido. Y además también porque a ellos les duele profundamente, Fidel, el éxito que tú has tenido.
That's why they went a little bit crazy when the visit happened, the reactionaries, because it hurts them. The success that the Cuban Revolution had and Fidel Castro had, it hurt them. It hurt them in their pride.
El hecho que mineros, campesinos, obreros, soldados, sacerdotes hayan dialogado contigo.
The fact that miners, farmers, workers, soldiers, priests, and kinds of people would walk by his side.
Las grandes manifestaciones de masa, claro, lógicamente, han sido de cariño y afecto para ti la Revolución Cubana, pero
it's like he was praising the fact that the big masses were moved by the Cuban Revolution.
También en el fondo, de apoyo al gobierno, porque es el gobierno del pueblo.
And these people who are gathering to cheer Fidel in Chile, who were gathering at the moment, were also showing their support for the government, the process of change, of course.
Y que ha hecho posible tu presencia aquí, ¿verdad?
Es cierto, pero te voy a decir una cosa. La mano del imperialismo está detrás de todo eso, sin ninguna duda.
And Fidel answers, that's true, but I'm going to tell you something. The hand of imperialism is behind all of that. There's no doubt about it. Fidel was spot on in that sentence, okay? The hand of imperialism is behind all of that reaction. No doubt about it.
Porque nosotros tenemos bastante experiencia y sé cómo actúan.
Nosotros.
Because we have a lot of experience with them, and I know how they act. So there's that. He talks from experience.
Y cierto aceleramiento de esas actitudes y ciertas tácticas y la forma en que se han producido y precisamente durante la visita.
And the way that these behaviors were accelerated, and the certain tactics that they used, and the way they've been growing before the visit.
Cuando estaba una gran parte del mundo con los ojos puestos en el resultado del diálogo entre nosotros y del encuentro entre nuestros pueblos y nuestros
With a spotlight on the result of the dialogue between us and our peoples.
procesos.
And the process.
Entonces, han tratado de desviar la atención hacia determinados tipos de problemas. Yo no
So they tried to divert the attention to certain different types of problems.
tengo la menor duda,
I don't have the least of doubt
ni la más remota duda, de que la mano del imperialismo ha estado detrás de todo.
that the hand of the imperialism is behind all of this. Brilliant diagnostic by our comandante. Just saying. Brilliant analysis there. Lula had a peaceful revolution as well, and they made him lawfare. You know, that's the new tactics of the right wing when there's peaceful revolutions happening. They fabricated a legal case, you know, the thing with Petrobras, and it was absolutely fake. Rest in power, both Castro and Allende, you know that. You know that. No worries.
Pero es evidente. Y por eso que hice referencia a declaraciones que son inconcebibles y que demuestran la intromisión en la vida interna de un país.
And Allende responds, that's plain to see. That's why I made some statements about some, you know, other statements that referring to some other statements that were absolutely out of place in the development of a country.
Y que viene de altos funcionarios, ¿no?, de Estados Unidos, que
And they're coming from high office in the United States.
por lo menos debían medir el contenido y el alcance de sus expresiones.
They should at least measure the content and the reach of their speech.
No solo inconcebibles, sino coincidentes.
It's not only inconceivable, but coinciding.
Claro, como
Prácticamente el mismo día.
Exacto.
Practically on the same day. And Allende replies exactly.
Bueno, pero volviendo, ¿no?, a retomar la curiosidad de Augusto Olivar. Efectivamente, nosotros también hemos siempre tenido en cuenta que la contrarrevolución pretendería alzarse.
So going back to reply to Mr. Augusto Olivar and satisfy his curiosity, we have always taken into account that counter-revolution would keep trying, you know, to overthrow us.
Y frente a ellos, ¿cuál será la respuesta? La respuesta
So which would be our answer to them? What would we do about it?
del pueblo, organizado, disciplinado, la unidad popular.
The answer of the people, organized and you know, the popular unit.
La lealtad de las Fuerzas Armadas.
Unity, sorry. And the loyalty of the armed forces, which was what they undermined, the CIA.
Y de carabineros tradicionales,
And the police.
en el sentido respetuoso de la Constitución y la ley.
So he says traditional in the respectful sense of the tradition and the law, and I think that's where he didn't see it coming. It was the carabineros, and it was the military who basically made the coup possible and exterminated, you know, thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. They were killed, you know, gathered and killed. Yeah, phony corruption charges from the corrupt CIA back to reactionaries. Of course, Castro sounds like a paranoid conspiracy theorist, but he was right. He was spot on. And I don't think there's a trace of paranoia in his way of talking. Yeah. Castro had a lot of, he says so in an interview himself. He's talking from experience, knowing the methods, studied the methods of the enemy. That's super important. You know, and extreme reactionary and imperialistic powers are the enemy of the people. I mean, other people are not our enemy. But those systems, those reactionary powers, they are. It sucks. And we don't want any enemies. We as people, we don't want any enemies. We want to live in peace and prosper, you know? We want to have good lives and quality lives. Problem is that these imperialistic powers and capitalism has been at war with us for decades. And we've been just taking the punches. That's about it. So, but anyway, we don't even have to do like something super radical right now. Let's just say, this factory not yours anymore, motherfucker. This company not yours anymore. I don't answer to you. We've organized as workers and we're taking over. That government not yours anymore. Sorry about that. You were a corrupt judge. You're out of the job. We can offer you another job. I don't know, sweeping, or cleaning up, being an apprentice of a workshop, doing something useful, for people. But people who have demonstrated to be too corrupt and too, awful to hold positions of power. They need not to hold positions of power. But no problem, they don't need to suffer. Just get a different job because you're not qualified. That's all, The way that the alphabet soups did COINTELPRO was to remove credibility from anyone trying to speak out against empire. Definitely. Paired with media that gaslights the masses. Definitely. It's manipulation. We've been indoctrinated with capitalist realism. Okay, moving on.
Nosotros tenemos conciencia además que el proceso chileno es irreversible.
We're conscious also that the Chilean process was irreversible. Well, I'm so sorry.
Quiero insistir, Augusto. El proceso chileno es irreversible.
He's convinced that the Chilean process was irreversible. It was a very powerful process, to be honest. And nobody saw that coming, It was massacre, fear, death. It was way too powerful. Alas. That would be a point for a Maoist organization, to be honest.
El pueblo está en el gobierno. Si lograran ellos lo que no van a conseguir, derrocar a este gobierno, Chile caería en el caos.
And that's a good diagnosis. He says the people are in the government. If this government would fall, if they made this government fall, Chile would fall into chaos, which is what happened. Chile went into the worst economic and social shape that it could have been. Chile could have been one of the richest countries in Latin America. Latin America could be the richest and most wealthy continent in the world. Basically. But Chile, of all places, with all the mining industries, abysmal. But he was right in this diagnosis. If they made them fall, Chile would go to shit, and that's what happened.
En la violencia, en la lucha fratricida.
Chaos, violence, and brother-to-brother fratricidal fight. It's exactly what happened.
El fascismo. Y por
To which Fidel replies, fascism.
cierto, claro, por una cosa, el imperialismo que ha estado y está detrás de todos los procesos para atajar la revolución, que significan los cambios y su derrota, en Chile no va a poder desembarcar.
It's so sad. Fidel says fascism, and he says, of course. But the thing is, those imperialist powers that are trying to oppose all kinds of liberatory process all over the world, they're not going to be able to disembark in here. And they didn't do physically, but they were already training the Pinochet and the army. They planted the seed of the coup already. Chile was the blueprint for neoliberal era example for I would highly recommend this. It's a long read, okay? Naomi Klein's The Shock Doctrine. But it talks a lot about Chile, it talks about Argentina, it talks about South Africa and how, they practice what they call the voodoo politics. And it talks about Poland and Wałęsa and Solidarność. And it sucked.
En Chile no va a intervenir materialmente, pero
They're not going to intervene materially, which they didn't materially, but they did ideologically. They really infiltrated people to train the army and to train the economists at the Chicago School of Economics, to impose the worst economic policies, to be the experiment for the awful policies that were going to take over the world eventually. They weren't even serving the US government. They were serving multinational corporations, which, as Napalm Death say in track 1 of their album Scum, multinational corporations, genocide of the starving nations.
Busca otros caminos. ¿Cuál es? Alentar a los grupos reaccionarios.
And they're looking for different ways, which are encouraging the reactionary groups, and he was right.
E incubar a los grupos fascistas.
And incubate the fascist groups. What he didn't expect and take into account, it was they were also infiltrating the army. And that's problematic.
Que utilizan la demagogia y movilizan los grupos de menor conciencia social.
They're demagogic and they mobilize the groups with less social consciousness.
Pero yo tengo la seguridad y la certeza absoluta.
But I have the absolute certainty
de la respuesta implacable y dura del pueblo.
That the people would strike back in a ruthless way.
Y personalmente, yo cumplo una tarea. Yo no estoy allí para satisfacer una vanidad personal, ni honor.
And personally, I have a task to accomplish. I'm not here for my own pleasure, personal pleasure or honor.
Yo soy un luchador que toda mi vida
I've been a fighter all of my life.
he dedicado mi esfuerzo y mi capacidad a hacer posible el camino al socialismo.
I dedicated my effort and my capacity to pave the road for socialism.
Y cumpliré el mandato que el pueblo me ha entregado.
And I'll carry on the mandate that the people have bestowed on me.
Lo cumpliré implacablemente. Cumpliré el programa que le hemos prometido a la conciencia política de Chile.
And I'll be relentless and I'll deliver the program that we promised to the people of Chile.
Y aquellos que desataron siempre la violencia social, si desatan la violencia política, si el fascismo pretende utilizar los medios con que siempre arrasó a los que pretendieron hacer la revolución.
And those who unleash the political violence and the social violence and the fascism, if they're trying to undo this revolution, they will face...
Contarán con la respuesta nuestra y mi decisión implacable.
And they will face our response and my implacable, absolutely powerful decision.
Yo terminaré de presidente de la República cuando cumpla mi mandato.
And I'll be done as a president of the Republic when my mandate is over.
Tendrán que acribillarme a balazos como lo dijera ayer para que deje de actuar.
This is heart-wrenching because he says they'll have to fill me up with bullets so I stop acting. And by the bullet he died. Salvador Allende, rest in power.
No defiendo una cosa personal, defiendo al pueblo de Chile en su justo anhelo de hacer las transformaciones que le permitan vivir en dignidad, con un sentido nacional distinto y hacer de Chile un país independiente, dueño de su propio destino.
And I'm not defending a personal cause. I'm defending the desire of the people of Chile to make their own way and have a different path.
Yo creo que eso es una posición clara.
I think that's a clear position, he says to Fidel. And I think Fidel is going to reply right now.
Te admiro mucho ese pronunciamiento tuyo.
I really admire those words you just said.
Y realmente te felicito.
And I really congratulate you for it.
Estoy seguro que eso será una bandera para el pueblo.
I'm pretty sure that would be a flag for the people.
Porque donde los dirigentes están dispuestos a morir, el pueblo está dispuesto a morir.
Because when leaders are willing to die, the people are willing to die too.
Y dispuesto a hacer lo que sea necesario.
And they'll do whatever it takes. I see movement in the chat. Let's address the chat. Yeah, they get to wash their hands with it. It would be nice to have a government that backed liberation and socialist liberations with no obligation, mutual aid. Mutual aid, the world would be so much safer. Definitely. Mutual aid is basic. Solidarity. I'll do part 2 of the Spanish Revolution soon. Just needed to take this out of.
Y eso ha sido un factor muy esencial en todo proceso político revolucionario.
And this leadership being willing to die to do whatever it takes and being on board with the people, and people being on board with the leadership is a key factor for every revolutionary process.
Por eso yo estimo mucho esas declaraciones que ayer hizo también el presidente en el acto de masa y acaba de reiterar hoy.
That's why we really support these declarations, this type of statements that the president did yesterday in this mass act the day before they made the interview, and he just did today, and the day did the interview.
Sí. No queda otra posibilidad
There is no other choice
que también hacerles entender a ellos
than making them understand as well
que este no es un proceso de un hombre.
that this is not the process of a man.
Este es un pueblo consciente, con dirigentes que sabrán continuar el camino en el evento que algo ocurriera.
That this is a people that are conscious, they have leaders who would know how to continue in the case that something would happen. And something did happen, and yeah. This is heart-wrenching. Sorry about this.
Ya tenemos nosotros la presencia de los trabajadores, dirigiendo las empresas, actuando en los ministerios, participando en las resoluciones fundamentales. La Central Única de Trabajadores es un pivote junto a los partidos de la Unidad Popular de este proceso.
So you have the workers participating in the councils of companies, and they're working on all of the process that entail public life.
Por lo tanto, hay una base de sustentación que es
Therefore, there is an important social base,
el pueblo.
and that's the people.
Y eso tú sabes perfectamente bien que es invencible.
And you know as well as I do that is invincible. The people united will never be defeated. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
Comandante, tanto el presidente Allende como usted han hablado todo el tiempo del imperialismo como principal enemigo de los procesos revolucionarios de ambos países.
So they've been talking for a while that the imperialism is the most prominent enemy of the process of both revolutionary processes on both countries.
Resulta casi inexplicable la supervivencia del proceso cubano a 90 millas de los Estados Unidos.
And it's hard to explain the survival of the Cuban process 90 miles away from the United States.
¿Cómo puede usted definir las características de ese proceso?
Bueno,
How can you define the characteristics of that process?
tiene un conjunto de factores.
Well, there's a different array of factors in play.
Pero la revolución ocurre en un momento en que la correlación de fuerza del mundo está cambiando.
But the revolution happens in a moment where the correlation of forces is changing. Wink, wink. A moment where the correlation of forces is way. What would that be? That moment? Is it today? Is it? I don't know. Is it today? I don't know.
Aunque realmente todavía a nuestro juicio en el 59 favorecía al imperialismo.
Although, absolutely, back in 1959, it was very favorable to imperialism.
Y ellos inicialmente ensayan una serie de armas. Cualquiera
And from the get-go, they're trying to practice some different weaponry.
de las cuales habría bastado en otras circunstancias para destruir un gobierno.
Some of them would have been enough to destroy a government.
No se dieron cuenta del tipo de gobierno que se había formado.
But they didn't know the type of government that was in place in the Cuban Revolution.
Como una fuerza que se desarrolla en el combate, que logra un gran apoyo de la nación.
But because this is a force that is developed in combat that gets a great support from the people in the nation.
Ahora ellos intentan destruirnos, apenas hicimos algunas leyes que cambiaban la estructura y que chocaban.
They tried to destroy to destroy us at the very moment that we decided to set a set of laws that change the structure
Con sus intereses, como fue
that were conflicting with their interests,
la ley de reforma agraria,
like the agrarian reform law.
con el bloqueo económico. Digamos,
With
nos
economic
suprimieron la
blockade.
cuota azucarera.
they took away our sugar quota.
Suprimieron totalmente los combustibles.
They blocked any fuel intake from us.
Eso habría bastado para crear una situación muy difícil a cualquier
That would have been enough to create a very difficult situation for any country.
país. Claro, habría desalentado inmediatamente a las capas más débiles, más atrasadas, más
Of course, that would have discouraged immediately the most disadvantaged layers of the society.
cobardes, habría movilizado a sus aliados sociales.
It would have mobilized their social allies and, the cowardly people.
Pero en Cuba, ¿qué ocurrió? En Cuba estaba el pueblo y eso sí.
But what happened in Cuba? Cuba was home of the people.
Sirvió para energizarlo, levantar el espíritu.
So that thread energized people and lifted the spirits.
Pero además pudimos contar en ese momento
But most of all, we could also count on that moment
con la solidaridad internacional.
on the
Desde el
international solidarity.
punto de vista económico, fue muy importante y muy decisiva para nosotros en ese
The economic point of view was very key, very decisive in that moment for us.
momento, que la Unión Soviética nos compró el azúcar.
Because the Soviet Union bought us all of the sugar.
Petróleo, Fidel.
Y nos abasteció de petróleo.
And they supplied us with oil.
Preguntaba,
Fueron dos factores muy importantes.
¿cuánto petróleo al año?
How much oil a year? He's saying, Allende is asking. Well, Fidel is saying, they were very key factors. Yeah, I know. Keeping imports and exports of necessary goods, right?
En ese momento consumíamos unos 4 millones de toneladas.
Qué importante.
So about 4 million tons of oil were consumed yearly in Cuba back in the day,
Y ellos producían ciento y tantos millones. Fue
when they produce over 100 and something millions.
un gran esfuerzo.
That's a great effort.
No tenían la producción de hoy y la flota de transporte que tienen hoy.
And they didn't have the production levels and the logistics that they have today, the Soviet Union. Well, that day, the 70 something when they did this interview, okay?
Pero de entonces ellos, los imperialistas, intentaron ya el empleo de las armas.
That's when the imperialists, they tried to employ weapons. That's when they escalated.
Y fueron a usar el procedimiento de Guatemala. Una invasión
And they wanted to try the same thing as in Guatemala, an invasion.
de mercenarios desde el exterior.
Invasion with mercenaries from the outside.
Indiscutiblemente subestimaron una vez más al pueblo.
Of course, they underestimated the people once again.
Y la invasión fue totalmente aplastada.
And the invasion was absolutely crushed.
Después estaban planeando ya otras medidas.
And they were planning different measures.
Otras agresiones con intervención directa de su fuerza.
Different aggressions with direct intervention on behalf of their armed forces.
Y fueron esos factores los que originaron las medidas que condujeron a la crisis de octubre.
And it was those factors that drove the October crisis. It was the missile crisis, I guess.
Ellos han utilizado armas políticas, armas militares, armas económicas.
They have tried to use political weapons, military weapons, economical weapons.
Pero nosotros hemos logrado desarrollar un pueblo muy unido.
But we managed to develop a very united people. And fuck Kennedy, by the way. Don't worry. Lurk away, it's fine. I like the, the A-team operators at the Bay of Pigs. Yeah. And in Venezuela. I pity the fool that underestimates the spirit of the Cuban people. You know the drill. You know the drill, Silver Spook. You know the drill. Damn, you're an awesome comrade through and through. You're all awesome people, good people, fantastic.
En que no hay ningún factor diversionista, no hay elemento de división. Hemos creado una gran igualdad.
So they managed to keep a cohesion of the people. There are no diversionist factors. They have developed this unity in the Cuban people.
Una gran unidad. En nuestro pueblo, hombres y mujeres están dispuestos a pelear. En nuestro país, hombres y mujeres están dispuestos a luchar hasta la última gota de sangre.
Men and women are willing to fight in their country, and men and women are willing spill even the last drop of blood for their country.
Y eso el imperialismo lo sabe.
And that's something that the imperialists know.
Y por eso nos respeta.
That's why
Y
they
yo
respect
no
us.
creo que tenga ya ni la más remota posibilidad de aplastar a la revolución.
And I don't think they have even the remotest possibility of crushing the revolution.
Y en todo caso tendría que aplastar el país.
And in any case, they would have to level the country.
Y nosotros, con relación a eso, tenemos una frase de Antonio Maceo, que fue uno de nuestros más valerosos combatientes de la independencia.
And in regards to that, we have a sentence from Antonio Macero, who was one of the fighters for their independence.
Quien intente apoderarse de Cuba, recogerá el polvo de su suelo.
Whoever tries to take over Cuba, they'll pick up the dust from the ground,
Anegado en sangre,
drenched in blood,
si es que no perece en la demanda.
if they don't even if, that said, if they don't perish in the task. That's how fierce the Cuban, were to keep their country. Yeah, JFK was a piece of trash and, sex abusive and imperialist, aristocracy. That's why, I'm not gonna sidetrack again.
Y eso es lo que nosotros podemos decir hoy y tenemos la completa seguridad de que sería así. Además de
And that's something that we can say today, and we're absolutely sure that is the case, Fidel is saying.
que nos resulta tan fácil, desde desde el punto de vista militar, resolver determinadas misiones, porque en determinados
And for us, it's extremely easy from the military standpoint to resolve certain types of missions.
puntos nosotros podemos lograr una correlación de fuerza,
Because at certain points we can have a force correlation,
por lo menos en tierra, similar
at least in land,
a la de un grupo de las mejores divisiones de infantería de Estados Unidos.
to that of a group of the best divisions of the United States Army. They were really fierce fighters, and they had a good cause to back it up.
Eso es una cosa clara y ellos lo saben.
That's something clear, and they know that.
Pero saben que tenemos además la solidaridad del campo socialista
But they also know that we have that we're backed by the solidarity of the socialist bloc,
y las consecuencias que pudieran tener una guerra de ese tipo de exterminio, un genocidio contra Cuba.
and the consequences that an extermination war, a genocide, would carry on if they did it against Cuba.
Entonces, estos son los factores que explican la solidez, la fortaleza y la seguridad de nuestro pueblo.
Those are the factors that explain the solidity, the fortitude of our people.
En la revolución.
Ya no es
Within the
época de
revolution.
genocidio. Eso el mundo te lo rechaza.
And Allende says this is not a time for genocide. It's people reject that. It sucks, that he was so optimistic, but he was very right. Nobody could see that shit coming.
Violentamente. Y la conciencia de los pueblos se levantará.
And the consciousness of the peoples will arise, That Allende was very optimistic, and he was right to be optimistic, okay? Don't paint Allende as naive. It's two different views of the same move to help people, okay, against imperialism. But imperialism was very strong in the southern cone, because of the lack of. It's a complex situation.
De cualquier amenaza de ese tipo.
Nosotros podemos levantar 600.000 hombres sobre las armas en cuestión de horas.
We can take up to 600,000 men on arms in a matter of hours.
Presidente Allende y comandante Castro, ustedes se han reunido en muchas oportunidades en Cuba, pero es esta la primera vez y es Chile del encuentro de ustedes dos como gobernantes.
So the journalist is mentioning that they had several meetings in Cuba, but this is the first time of them both in Chile as officially.
La atención de todo el mundo ha estado concentrada sobre estas conversaciones que ustedes han tenido.
the eyes of the world are on these conversations that you've been having
La visita al comandante Castro.
during the visit of Commander Castro.
Y especialmente América Latina es la que ha estado pendiente.
And especially Latin America has eyes on you both.
¿Qué le parece a usted, presidente, este encuentro de ustedes como gobernantes de los pueblos que están en el proceso revolucionario?
What do you think, President Allende, this meeting of you both as presidents or political leaders of the of these revolutionary processes,
Frente al cuadro de una América Latina explotada.
considering the framework of an exploited Latin America?
La verdad es que tenemos que considerar que Cuba y Chile constituyen la vanguardia de un proceso.
The truth is, we need to consider or take into consideration that Cuba and Chile constitute the avant-garde of a process
Que tiene que hacer el resto de los pueblos latinoamericanos.
that needs to happen in the rest of the Latin American countries.
Yo diría más que al resto de los pueblos explotados del mundo.
I would even go further and say that the rest of the oppressed peoples of the world.
Pero América Latina no puede seguir siendo solo continente de la esperanza.
But Latin America cannot keep on being just the continent of hope.
Hay que imaginarse lo que significa la brecha, la distancia que separa a nuestros países, dependientes en lo económico y sometidos en lo político,
We need to imagine the breach that separates, the gap that separates our countries that are depending on the economical and political
de los países del capitalismo industrial y los países socialistas.
from the countries of industrial capitalism and socialist countries.
En América Latina no puede seguir existiendo la diferencia brutal de una minoría dueña del poder y la riqueza
In Latin America, we cannot keep on tolerating the existence of a minority that holds all the wealth and the power,
y las grandes masas al margen de la cultura, de la salud, de la vivienda,
and keep the big masses away from culture and health and living spaces,
de la alimentación, de la
of food,
recreación, del
of creation.
descanso. Muchas veces lo hemos dicho y
Many times we said this,
bastaría citar tan solo una cifra.
and I'd like to just quote a cipher.
En América Latina hay más de 20 millones de seres humanos que viven al margen del conocimiento de la moneda como medio de intercambio.
In only Latin America, there are 20 millions of human beings who live away from the knowledge of monetary value.
En América Latina hay 140 millones de semianalfabetos y analfabetos. En
There are 140 million people who cannot read or write.
América Latina faltan 19 millones de viviendas. Es decir,
They are lacking 19 millions of housing facilities for people in Latin America.
53% de los latinoamericanos se alimenta mal.
50% of Latin Americans are underfed.
En América Latina hay 17 millones de cesantes y además
There are 17 million unemployed people in Latin America.
hay más de 60 millones de gente que tiene solo trabajos ocasionales.
And there are over 60 millions of people who have only seasonal
Por lo tanto,
jobs. Sorry.
el
Therefore,
régimen capitalista ha demostrado su ineficacia. La explotación del hombre por el hombre
the capitalist regime has proven its inefficacy. The exploitation of the man by man
como característica de eso ha
as a characteristic of that
hecho crisis. América Latina tiene la oportunidad de estar presente en el momento en que el mundo cruje
has carried crisis. Does it ring a bell to anyone? Does it ring a bell? Crisis under the capitalist moment, right? Come on. With me, please. Allende's diagnosis here is absolutely spot on and says Latin America must be present in this moment where the world is crunching.
cruje en lo económico,
Crunching in the economical plane,
cruje en lo moral,
in the
cruje en lo
moral plane,
político.
in the
Y ahí
political plane.
entonces que las reservas de este continente tendrán que expresarse cuando los pueblos alcancen la posibilidad de intervenir, cuando los pueblos lleguen al gobierno.
That's why the reserves of this continent would need to express themselves when the people are able and the people are in power.
Cuando hayan arrasado con las viejas oligarquías,
When they are done with the old oligarchies,
cómplices del imperialismo,
accomplices of imperialism,
cuando indiscutiblemente haya una voz
and when indubitably there is a voice
de América Latina, de pueblo, continente, como lo soñaran los
of Latin America, of the people continent, as it's pointed out by
próceres de nuestra independencia.
by the leaders of our independence movements. Latin America as a big people that occupy a continent, that build a continent, that they are in charge of a whole continent, which is, Latin America, which is partly North, Center, and South America. It's a huge swath of population that have been systemically oppressed by imperialism and capitalism.
Por los caminos de acuerdo con la característica de cada país.
That's che. Through the roads, according to the characteristics of every country.
Emerge esta voluntad, ya se hace presente e
This will is emerging and it's coming into shape.
indiscutiblemente no solo en este continente, sino en otros continentes. Lo hemos
Indubitably not just in our continent, but in every continent.
dicho muchas veces. Los que han caído en Vietnam y caen en Vietnam
We've said this many times. Those fallen in Vietnam and who are falling in Vietnam, and our solidarity to the people of Vietnam always, now and always.
no solo lo hacen por su patria, lo hacen también
They don't only do it for their country.
por el resto de los explotados del mundo.
They also do it for the exploited people in the world. And he's talking about the Vietnamese people. Okay? Not the American soldiers, whatever. He's talking about the Vietnamese people fighting for the liberation of Vietnam and therefore fighting for the liberation of the peoples of the world. There are twice as many people in Latin America, than in the US. Definitely. Latin America has all the power in the world, all the resources, all the people. It's just this bullshit layer of capitalism that is absolutely powerless, but is at the same time controlling everyone. It's in everybody's minds. Our minds are colonized. Free your mind, your ass will follow.
Los que cayeron en Cuba señalaron un camino de esfuerzo y sacrificio para hacer
Those who fell in Cuba, they pointed out a path of strength and sacrifice.
posible la Cuba de hoy, primer
That's what made possible today's Cuba,
territorio libre de América Latina. Los que
the first free territory of Latin America.
cayeron hace años en Chile constituye la simiente de este proceso revolucionario.
Those who fell many years ago in Chile, they constitute the seeds of this revolutionary process, which I should address the people who are doing the revolts in Chile today, who are inheriting that revolutionary process, that need to throw down Piñera and redo their constitution today. Those are our people, and those are people who deserve all our support and solidarity. The peoples all over the world, but in specifically right now, because we're dealing with Salvador Allende right here, the people in Chile.
Los pueblos explotados del mundo tienen conciencia de su derecho a la vida.
The exploited peoples of the world are conscious, are aware of the right to live.
Y por eso que el enfrentamiento está más allá de nuestra frontera y se hará en sentido universal.
And that's why this conflict is way beyond our borders, and it will be made in a universal sense. We're still working on it, okay, good people? Let's make it happen. Let's make this process happen. It doesn't have to be violent, but we need to count on the fact that they'll come at us with everything they've got, and that includes violence, which is happening right now in the streets of the United States. By the hands of the police, for instance, and the militarized police, and it's happening worldwide. They're coming after us. They've been coming after us beat by beat, and we've been taking the punches like sheep. And it's okay, you know, because all we want is to live in peace. So why should we be fighting? But they're doing the fighting already. So what we're doing right now is just being behind.
Pero América Latina tendrá algún día la voz que le corresponde a un pueblo hasta hoy día sometido para que sea mañana la voz de un continente libre.
So Latin America has finally the voice that it deserves. A people that have been submitted and a people that would be free at last.
Nosotros consideramos
We
que
consider
este continente tiene en su vientre una criatura
that this continent has inside of it a child
que se llama revolución,
whose name is revolution,
que viene en camino y
that it's coming our way,
que inexorablemente por ley biológica
but that inexorably, that unstoppably by a biological imperative,
por ley social, por ley de la historia,
by historical imperative, by social imperative,
tiene que nacer.
must be born.
Y nacerá de una forma o de otra.
And it will be born in one way or another.
El parto será institucional,
The labor will be institutional,
en un hospital o será en una casa.
in a hospital or in a house.
Serán ilustres médicos o será la partera quien recoja la criatura.
It will be by illustrious doctors or by a doula who would pick up the child.
Pero de todas maneras habrá parto.
But in any case, there will be this labor.
América está dormida.
America is asleep, but not for very long. The wind starts blowing. That brings freedom. America is asleep, but not for long. The wind starts blowing, and it's bringing our freedom. That's us, people. The wind is blowing, and we need to bring our freedom about. Peoples all around the world, everyone with our own characteristics, in our own way, but together, in solidarity with each other and with the people around the universe. We need to make it happen. This is our revolution. This is our moment. This is the time. There was an interview with Allende's son.
Lo que acabamos de ver refleja los debates que había en la década del 70 en América Latina. Y
So this
principalmente
dialogue we just saw reflects the debates that were in place in the 70s in Latin America.
esta cuestión si se podía llegar al socialismo por la vía pacífica.
And it sparks this question, if we could reach socialism in a peaceful way.
Sin llegar a ninguna conclusión, lo
Without reaching to any conclusions,
interesante justamente lo que estaban planteando por un lado Salvador Allende
the interesting part is what both Salvador Allende and Fidel Castro were actually putting on the table.
y Fidel Castro. Allende dice, yo cumpliré con mi programa, yo voy
Allende says, I would go through with my program.
adelante con este programa radical que incluyó la nacionalización del cobre, de los
With this radical program that included the nationalization of copper
salitres, de los
and the salt
bancos.
and the banks.
Ustedes veían en las imágenes la recorrida que hizo Fidel Castro en Chile durante esas 3 semanas.
So some of the images show the tour that Fidel Castro did during those weeks. I'm going to read your comment, but there was an interview with Allende's son who's working in Venezuela to keep people fed. and provide medical care despite current U.S. embargo, as it freezes stealing entire tankers, etc. Yeah, I think Venezuela is going through a blockade that is very similar to Cuba, and Venezuela is not even a socialist country. There's a lot of private enterprise, going on. They just have social programs. It is ridiculous. Sorry. Let's continue. Pedro Brigade.
Hay muchas fotos que han quedado grabadas en la retina.
Many powerful images here.
Este punto final que salía en ese momento en Chile cubrió la visita de Fidel Castro.
Punto Final magazine was at the time in Chile and covered the visit of Fidel Castro.
Y hay algunas fotos que son verdaderas perlitas, como
some actually memorable pictures.
Por ejemplo, ver a Fidel Castro caminando junto al general Augusto Pinochet.
It shows Fidel Castro walking with let's see. Let's see if I can find it. Like the image of Fidel Castro. What? With Pinochet. Images. Shit, yeah. This is sick. However, he was a military in the army, in the Chilean army. That was supposed to be loyal. If anything, it proves that fucking Pinochet was a fucking snake, right? Spanish Chris Morris. I don't know who Chris Morris is, sorry. I don't know. Maybe.
Fidel Castro en esa visita no se privó de nada. Visitó el norte, la zona de los salitres.
So he did all kinds of stuff, Fidel Castro. Okay, he didn't stop doing anything. He started at the north in the salt mine, salt facilities. I don't know if it were salitres. I'm sure it implies like big plains of swaths of salty parts where the sea comes in and then goes out with a low tide, and you can pick up the salt residue.
Las zonas de la famosa matanza de Iquique de 1900.
The sites of the famous Iquique slaughter.
107.
1907. Slaughter of Iquique, Santa Maria de Iquique. I posted before in the chat. I'm gonna post it again. Santa Maria de Iquique. That's a famous syndicalist struggle, unions.
Las minas de cobre de Chuquicamata, que incluso hay un diálogo muy gracioso.
Copper mines of Chuquicamata.
Porque él dice, puedo decir Chuqui, porque la mayoría les cuesta decir Chuquicamata, y los mineros le dicen, no, queremos ver si puede decir Chuquicamata.
He was trying to cut it short and say just Chuqui, and the miners went like, no, you go ahead and say the whole thing, Chuquicamata, come on, it's not so hard.
No lo vimos en el documental, pero es parte de las anécdotas que se contaban.
It doesn't show in the documentary, but it's part of the anecdotes that were told.
Por esta visita de Fidel Castro, que estuvo también en el sur, en los pozos petroleros en Tierra del Fuego.
Oil wells in the south in Tierra del Fuego. South Tierra del Fuego, that's Antarctic territory. It's beautiful.
Encontró con estudiantes, con obreros, con el arzobispo Silva Enrique de Santiago.
Met students, workers, and the archbishop of the Santiago province.
Encontró con sacerdotes, recibió un conjunto de sacerdotes progresistas en la embajada.
Progressive priests, by the way, Theology of Liberation. Take notes, people.
De Cuba, una foto muy linda donde se lo ve sobre un banquito dialogando con el resto de la gente, que están todos sacerdotes sentados en el piso prestándole atención. El 29 de julio de 1973, meses antes del golpe,
29 July in 1973, months before the coup,
Fidel Castro le escribe una carta.
Fidel Castro writes a letter to Salvador Allende,
que es bastante significativa, porque el 29 de junio hubo un ensayo de golpe de Estado.
Which means a lot, because on June 29th there was a rehearsal of the coup.
En Chile, conocido como el tancazo o el...
say an attempt, which is they made with tanks. El tancazo is tanks.
Tanquetazo.
Tanquetazo is like hitting someone with a tank, basically. But yeah, it was a tank-based coup.
El 29 de julio, Fidel le escribe desde La Habana una carta a Salvador Allende elogia su propósito de continuar con el proceso revolucionario.
And he writes this letter to Salvador Allende, Fidel Castro, and he's really praising him for, the will to continue with the process despite of these coup
Sin
attempts.
contienda civil, son las palabras textuales.
Without having to raise into arms, considering what they did with this coup attempt. That should have really been a wake-up call in hindsight. But, it's so easy to judge things in hindsight. I don't think there was enough clues, and Allende was definitely a pacifist and he hated seeing people suffer. So we got to understand Allende for real.
De Fidel Castro, su decisión de ofrendar la vida y también le ofrece ayuda.
And he offered some help. Should have taken it in hindsight. But again, everything is easy in hindsight. Let's don't be shitty about it, okay?
Él sabe que no tiene mucho para dar, sin embargo, es la solidaridad cubana, ofrece la ayuda.
Even when he knows he doesn't have a lot to give, he offers the Cuban solidarity. Cuba and Chile are like a gazillion kilometers away, really. I mean, they're very incredibly far away. To deploy troops in Chile would have been like an impossible endeavor, to be honest.
Ayuda. Yo les voy a recomendar dos libros. Ustedes saben, cuando vemos un documental, a mí me gusta
Here comes
recomendar
the book
algunos
recommendation.
libros. Uno que se llama Salvador Allende, la conspiración contra Chile.
Salvador Allende, The Conspiracy Against Chile.
Es un conjunto de discursos de Salvador Allende. Acá se puede entender muy bien lo que es el programa de
This is like compilations of discourse of
la Unidad Popular a través de las propias palabras de Salvador Allende, y tiene una perlita, que es el
and it's a compilation of discourses so we can understand the popular unity concept by Salvador Allende. There seems to be a hidden gem in it.
discurso de Fidel Castro después del golpe de Estado, a fines de septiembre,
Which is the discourse that Fidel Castro made after the coup in September.
en La Habana, donde
En La
habla
Habana.
justamente del golpe de Estado en Chile. Y el segundo que les quería mostrar es un libro chileno, la editorial LOM, ¿Qué hacía yo el 11 de septiembre de 1973?
Chilean book, What Was I Doing in September 11 of 1973, sorry.
Un libro apasionante, varias
There's the title there. ¿Qué hacía yo? What was I doing on the September 11th, 1973? ¿Qué hacía yo el 11 de septiembre de 1973?
figuras de la política, de las letras chilenas,
Another compilation of figures of the political and
que recuerdan qué pasó el 11 de septiembre de 1973.
So
Y
people
nosotros elegimos
remembering.
mostrarlo de una manera diferente, como les decía al principio, no los tanques, la figura de Pinochet, un
so they
diálogo
decided to pick this interview because it doesn't show the tanks and whatnot. Thank you, Pedro Brieger, fantastic journalist. So I think that's gonna be about it. I showed you this because I saw it this morning and I thought this is way too valuable to get lost, in the void. So I really wanted to, put my finger on it and show it to you and translate it to English and make it accessible for you all. I don't know. Was it any useful, good people? I hope it was. I don't know. You tell me, okay? But I tried. I tried. And anyway, I think that's going to be the end for the video cut for YouTube. Thank you very much for making it to the end.